I hereby call to order this meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Kusenberry, are there any amendments to the agenda this evening?
Madam Chair, you may want to move the presentation and reports to be done before the public hearings.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. So we will move in the interest of the time of our guests. The presentations and reports will switch with the public hearings. Thank you. Public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. And if comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of that public hearing. And in the interest of moving things along, because we do have a number of public hearings tonight, I did ask for a public comment sign-up sheet, so I'll go down the list in order first, and then I will call for anyone else. So we have Mr. Robert Ashton. Please come forward, sir. And when I call your name, please restate your name in case I couldn't read it or couldn't pronounce it. My apologies in advance. And also please state your address. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman and Board of Supervisors members, my name is Robert Ashton. I live at 14540 Ridge Road, King George, Virginia. I come here speaking as a concerned citizen and resident of King George County. And my comment is this. Through my years here in the county, I have looked at the Confederate monument with astounding contempt. I always wondered why this county would allow that type of monument to sit right in front of the courthouse where justice is supposed to be handed down equally. Is it to remind people of color that justice justice is not equal in King George County as the laws of this land dictate. Anytime someone of color must appear in the court, they are reminded of that statue standing tall in front of the courthouse. They already feel justice will not give them a chance. Statistics shows what type of punishment is handed down to people of color for the same offenses that their white counterparts would receive. Those are proven facts. All citizens know what the monument represents. First, it stood for disunion of this United States. Second, it stood for an official establishment of slavery based on race. This is a matter of historical fact. The Confederacy was a racist institution. Therefore, any statue or monument honoring the Confederacy endorses racism. Here in 2021, I asked why counties surrounding King George seem to understand what the statue represented to their minority citizens and took action to remove it from their courthouse yards. And yet, King George County has been reluctant to do so. As I mentioned this over a year ago, it appears to me that we haven't grown as we say we have. My question is, does King George leaders want to preserve a past of oppression for people of color or move forward in unity for all its citizens? That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mr. Wayne Bushrod.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Wayne Bushrod. I reside at 10144 Deer Lane in King George. As the previous speaker stated, I too am for the removal of the Confederate statue. It is time for it to be gone. Our neighbors to the west and to the south have taken actions based on their residents and their concerns and their feelings. King George, I have always held at a higher elevation than other localities. I don't see why we can't do the same. It's no use me repeating the what the former presenter said, but I support that statement wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Marcia Stonehill?
Marcia Stonehill, 17094 Ferry Dock Road. First, I remain in support of the NAACP request to move the Confederate monument. Second, RBAHC has submitted a revised letter of intent to the interim county administrator for your consideration. Along with the minor revisions, we are asking for your consideration on several other key points. These key points are included in the packet. Our reasoning for these requests will be revealed during public comments over the next several meetings. There are many details that have occurred since May 21st, 2019 that we are certain you would want to be aware of as you revisit this letter of intent and then the option agreement that is already in the hands of the King George County Attorney. In future public comment, we will cover the following. Number one, the barriers RBHC encountered with the county during negotiations. Number two, we absolutely need to discuss the fact that there is a troubling misconception leaving the public feeling that if they support the RBAHC strategy, then they are not supporting the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association. This got very messy along the way, so we must have the messy conversations for better clarity. The fact is that RBHC is 100% about supporting the alumni of the Ralph Bunche High School. Number three, along these lines, we believe it is vital to publicly discuss the reality of the many efforts that have gone before us since 1998. We have consolidated this information and it is quite enlightening. It makes one ask the question, in a way, is the RBHC strategy enabling the county to not prioritize spending toward a very relevant renovation? The strategy RBHC presents is a viable solution to a tight county budget and accomplishing the goal of honoring African American heritage in our county. But all of us as a community do need to accomplish better cooperation so solicitation to large donors can be solid. Now we have that reality on the table. And last, number four, throughout these last several years, I have had many conversations and I have learned many details about racial relations in King George County. It is imperative that some of this information be publicly acknowledged for the sake of awareness and historical accuracy. Of course, this will be accomplished by making general acknowledgments without disclosure of names or personal details. It is 2021. We can do this, and I believe you are the right group of leaders in this regard. This information will be sobering and will shed light on the uncomfortable situation we currently find ourselves in locally and otherwise. We've always said this is about much more than revitalizing a building. This is about healing a community. RBAHC treasures the mission. We cannot emphasize enough that this is a community endeavor and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stonehill. Deborah Vini.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Boards of Supervisors. My name is Deborah Vini. I reside at 9348 Lambs Creek Church Road here in King George County. I'm here to express my opposition to the monument / Confederate monument that stands in front of the courthouse. Members of the Board of Supervisors, I'd like to express as a member of the society in King George, a citizen, tax-paying citizen, that if you are indeed in agreement of unity for the members of the King George County residents, I say actions speak louder than words. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Feeney. Do we have anyone else here in the boardroom who wishes to provide public comment before I move on to online? Very good, then. Mr. Dines, you provided me with a list, and the first name on the list is David Jones. Can you please cue him up to speak? Mr. Jones, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, sir. You have 3 minutes.
As I said, my name is David Jones. I live at 5415 Winston Place, and I speak to you as the great-great-grandson of William Walter Jones, a Confederate soldier, a private, a poor farmer, farmer from Linton, Louisiana, who owned no slaves. I intend him and none of his compatriots disrespect, however. I'm not compelled to believe what he believed. He and his contemporaries were simply the pawns of greedy landed gentry who were willing to destroy the country to preserve slavery. For almost a year, I've been watching with interest. Most, if not all, surrounding counties and municipalities have completely removed or at least formulated plans to remove their Confederate memorials from public land. King George has done a lot of research and announced nothing about removing the Confederate memorial that stands in front of our courthouse. To avoid or delay the removal of the stone marker, I've been told that the stone monument contains the names of Union soldiers as well as Confederates. The only Union soldier's name that was given to me proved to have been born in King George, served the Confederate Army, lived his entire life in King George, and received a Confederate pension. 402 years ago, the first shipment of slaves arrived in North America in Virginia. 250 years later in King George, this monument to people who wanted to destroy the United States was erected. The government of King George at that time naively accepted land to erect the monument on the condition that it stand in that spot forever, so I've been told. That stone has been moved once, so that agreement was voided at that point. There's no reason for that monument to stand by the front door of our courthouse, whose function is to supposedly justly serve all the people of King George. If you want to erect a monument to all the people who were held as slaves in King George. Erect a monument that lists all of those names if you can find them. Each of those names should be the same size as the names on the current monument. List the name of every child who was torn from the arms of their mother and sold. List the names of all the fathers that were sold away from their families. List the names of all the women who watched their children or husbands or mothers or fathers sold or beaten to death or hanged by the privileged class. List the names of all the people of color adversely affected by Jim Crow laws, who were cheated out of the right to vote, cheated out of their land, prevented from owning land, or whose land was taken from them by adverse possession. That's a worthy monument. As for the stone monument on the courthouse lawn, I think it should be relocated far away from any structure that is associated with liberty or justice for all citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Dines, do we have anyone else waiting online for general public comment? Thank you, very good. Let's move on to reports of members of the board. Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. First, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who came out and spoke. I appreciate everyone's concerns with the monument. I know Mr. Britton had given us a report about the state of the property and the challenges in regards to ownership, and so those are still in place, and understanding who owns it, and then if it were to be removed, there could be repercussions as well. And so it's just not as simple as just moving it. I do appreciate Mr. Jones. I'd also heard there was a Union soldier on the memorial as well, and I've also heard there's an African American and a Native American that were listed as well. With those kinds of ideas, I kind of looked at it as a Civil War memorial, but I do appreciate that input about about that Union soldier, at least his statement that it was a Confederate soldier. I'm just not sure. I haven't done the research on it, so I don't know. But I think there are some other individuals on there as well, and it should be looked into it as well. As not a monument, but a memorial. I mean, these people who died, it doesn't mean that you look at their actions, and I can appreciate it. You don't look at their actions as, I'm sorry, I saw your reaction. You don't look at their actions as something that you're holding up and saying, this is what we agree with them. You're looking at, these are people who've died, and there are people who live in this community, that those are their ancestors, and it's just a memorial to them. I'm sure we all have ancestors who have done things that we would not be proud of. It doesn't mean that we disown them necessarily. or that we forget about them. I'm sure that we've all done things in ourselves that we're not proud of. And, you know, that I know I've had my own set of actions, you know, I've looked back on and regret. I'm sure we can all look back and think about things we've done, and people could look at us and say, well, how dare you do that? And it might not be to the level of what these people have done. It is terrible. Slavery is a terrible thing. I'm not trying to minimize it in any way. But I just don't see it as a holding up of the Confederacy and saying what they were doing was right. It wasn't right. It's a memorial to these people, and they're giving of their lives, and a remembrance for people to remember who these people were. Good actions and bad. We all have them. And with the fact that it is the challenges with the property, we do have a new courthouse that is being built. It obviously would not be moved with that, because it's the same issues as I said before. There are challenges with that property. I'm sure that's not what the answer is that people wanted to hear. Just kind of giving you my perspective on it, and I don't mean it to be disrespectful or to try to downplay how you feel about it. I'm just giving you a different perspective on it. But I do appreciate you coming out. Thank you for coming out and speaking and giving your words on this, so thank you. Ms. Stonehill, thank you as well for talking about your proposal. Look forward to it. I saw the email today. I haven't had a chance to actually go through it, but I'll take a look through it, and so I appreciate that. Other than that, I'd just like to say thank you to staff and to the Budget Advisory Committee and my colleagues for the work on the budget. And I know that we'll be having that public hearing tonight, which I'm sure there are some people here for as well to discuss. And so look forward to hearing from the citizens about that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Stonehill.
I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that came out and spoke. Mr. Ashton, Mr. Bushrod, Ms. Vini, Mr. Jones. It's definitely a topic that we're going to dig into. Like you said, it's all the other counties around us have moved their monuments and done stuff. So it's definitely a very touchy situation for both sides. But I know that we're definitely going to look into this further and see what we can do. It's not easy to try to please everybody, but I know we're definitely going to look into it and see what we can do for sure. I also wanted to say thank you to the Citizens Advisory Budget Committee as well for helping us do our budget this year. Also for staff, we had a very new team this year to do our budget and everything. I just wanted to say thank you very much. And report-wise, just working on the cigarette tax ordinance that we're going to be hearing here later on. And outside of that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Bender.
All right, well, first off, I want to thank everyone who came out and spoke from the heart, and I will be seeing Mr. Ashton on Thursday and speaking with him in our working group meeting. I would also first like to appoint Mr. Roger Nicely to the King George Parks and Rec Committee. His term is expiring May 31st, and it's a 3-year term.
So moved. Second, I'm sorry, you gave the motion. I'll say second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
I want to make it to everyone in the public. Shiloh still needs someone would like to be on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Please understand that I give a recommendation to the court and then they make a decision on it. So if anyone would like to be interested in that, please send me your information. We are also looking for Shiloh, somebody on the Social Services Board, and Ms. Kupka and I serve on GWRC and FAMPO, and we're still looking for 2 vacancies on the Citizen Transportation Advisory Committee and county rep on the Healthy Generations Board, which I serve on, that helps the elderly and seniors and disabled in the surrounding area. As many know, I'm on the King George Courthouse Committee. This committee is working well together. The model that is being used for this project, I want to thank our previous county administrator, Dr. Young, and our current interim county administrator and county engineer, Travis Kusenberry, for coming up and suggesting this model. I want to bring it up because Tony Bell, who's with Mosley Architects, he sent me an email when I was trying to get the plans to share with my colleagues. He had the following to say, and it's a good example, which I would like my colleagues and public to hear. The county and committee has been a pleasure to work with, and the dialogue, discussion, and conscientious building are a model for other localities in working together to come up with a plan for a building. It was brought to my attention from Ian Ollis, who's our director of FAMPA, which is the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, that the final census data and the effect it might have on transportation funding once the data is ready for release. And I was also part of a call with Ms. Kupka and other county staff for projects of interest for the Rural Transportation Planning Work Program, and that helps fund Caroline and King George road projects. I talked to a lot of citizens in the last 2 weeks and had great engaging conversations. I also was with my colleagues, Mr. Bush and Ms. Kupka, for the kickoff of the Fairview Stabilization Project. This project is to be a model for FEMA, VDM, and the localities working together for a common good. Though not in my district, I had some great conversations with a few residents in that tight-knit community. And I just want to bring it up because when I walked to the site, there was a house that was totally gutted. And a couple of the residents told me what happened. The husband and wife were sleeping in the house, and a lady was out walking her dog and saw the fire and got help and saved the lives of those two people. So I commend those residents for taking care of each other in that community and saving a couple of lives. And lastly, as a coach, I have worked with numerous great King George students and their families. And with sadness, I would like to mention a former cross-country and track athlete that lost his battle with cancer. Captain Douglas Richardson is U.S. Marine Corps, who leaves behind a wife, Amanda, and 2 young children. I want to thank him for his service serving his country as a fighter pilot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I'd like to take this opportunity in this public forum to congratulate my wife, Dr. Ann Bush, who 2 Fridays ago received her doctorate in education administration from Liberty University. This past Friday, I attended the Fairview Beach Riverbank Stabilization Project kickoff. It's been a long time coming. So I would like to thank, there are so many people that were involved with this, but in particularly Mr. Worley and Mr. Mike Bennett for continuing to press this forward. The prior and my current colleagues on the Board of Supervisors and all of our local and state and federal partners for bringing this project to fruition. The house that Ms. Bender mentioned, the unfortunate fire that happened at Fairview Beach, kind of exposed to something that I'd like to just bring up. So Company 3 located at Fairview Beach was staffed by 2 people on that duty section. That's what our current manning for fire rescue is. Had they been out on the EMS call, no one would have been at Company 3 to respond to that fire, which means they would have had to wait for either Company 1 or Company 2 at Dahlgren or mutual aid through Naval District of Washington. Instead of it being one house fire, it could have been an entire block. There were 40-mile-an-hour winds coming off the river that evening. So that's why it was critical, and I'd like to thank my colleagues for what we did for public safety, for compensation to help Chief Moody and Sheriff Giles with recruiting and retention so that we can not only keep Company 3, keep their doors open, but hopefully we can get more staff on board. I'd like to thank everybody that came out this evening to give public comment. And like Mr. Granger spoke, you know, there's a lot involved with the land and legal issues. But I would like to go on the record to condemn the atrocities of slavery. But I would like to point out that this is a great nation. This nation fought a bloody civil war to end slavery. This nation has made great strides to bridge the gap, and we still have a lot of work to do. But if you look in the world as it stands today, slavery still exists. So while we talk of monuments, we need to look at, while we recognize the atrocities of slavery, what are we doing as people in our community and in our nation to end slavery period. With that, I look forward to our budget discussions this evening and would like to thank my colleagues for all their hard work, staff, and for our Budget Advisory Committee. I think we have a good budget to put forward, and I look forward to our discussions tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. I'd like to thank everyone in attendance at this meeting here this evening. It's, I think, been a long time since we've had this many people at one of our meetings, so I am very glad to see all of you here. I particularly wish to thank Mr. Ashton, Mr. Bushrod, Mrs. Stonehill, Ms. Vini, and Mr. Jones online for their public comment. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. I want to formally enter Mr. Perry Bowen's correspondence of April 17, 2021 into the record. Mr. Kusenberry, and that was previously emailed to you, if you could ensure that that is entered into the record. Thank you, sir. I want to make the public aware Friends of the Rappahannock will host another litter cleanup day with us in conjunction with our landfill staff on Saturday, May 8th. They'll be focusing on Port Conway Road, and there will be a sign up online on their website for that. I want to thank the citizens who volunteered their time and their energy to participate on our Citizens Budget Advisory Committee. We greatly appreciate your time. I want to congratulate the King George High School football team on their first regional championship since 1995. There was a great send-off. A number of members of the community gathered, collected funds, and reserved a charter bus for the team and provided dinner. And we had a send-off for them last Friday night, right before they won the regional championship. I especially want to thank Sheriff Giles for his staff's assistance and his own participation in leading the motorcade. And we're looking forward to doing it again this Saturday as they travel to the state semifinal. And lastly, I have a legislative initiative that I wish to bring to the attention of the board. I am requesting consensus of the board to direct the county attorney to investigate and report back at a future meeting the steps necessary to prohibit retail sales of marijuana in our community pursuant to House Bill 2312.
I agree.
Ms. Bender?
Okay, just researching it.
Mr. Stonehill?
Yes.
Mr. Granger, you're okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Mr. Britton, if you could look into that for us and report back at a later date. For right now, we know you and I have had discussions that the retail aspect wouldn't be implemented until 2023 or 2024. 2020, yeah, 4. It is a little bit time bound as far as 2022 goes. So if you could report back to us at some point here later this year with any recommendation you'd see fit.
Yes, ma'am.
And just for my board members' information, I would not have brought this forward without speaking to Sheriff Giles first. So please know that. All right, I believe that is all I have for my board report this evening. Let's move on. I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda, please.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. County official reports. Constitutional officers report. I know Sheriff Giles was out in the lobby, but I don't see him here in the room. So Sheriff, do you have a report you wish to offer, sir? Okay, thanks, sir. All right then, report of the county attorney, Mr. Britton.
Just one thing, Madam Chair. I submitted it already. There's a delinquent real estate tax quarterly report from Santanderson who handles that. And it shows from the beginning of the program in 1986 to date, as well as where we are after 3 quarters. And so it's about $200,000 a year. And everything, it's an 80% resolution, so it seems in accord with last quarter's. We'll get a final report for 2021 later. I had nothing further.
Questions for Mr. Britton from members? No? All right, very good. Then we'll go ahead and move on to presentations and reports. NSA South Potomac Commander's Update by Captain Copeland. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we're nice to see everyone again for the first time in person. Happy to be here. I'm joined by Tom Stanley, who's the Installation Program Integrator, Senior Civilian Executive Director, and IGSA Guru for South Potomac, as well as Thomas Hastings, who is the newly hired Community Planning Liaison Officer. So he's who we want to get invited to any and every planning event that you have. He comes with a great amount of experience and a lot of energy, so happy to have him on board. As everyone in King George was very, very clear to today, we are fully mission capable as per the two really loud booms that happened about 2 o'clock today. The Naval Surface Warfare Center continues to do the research, development, and testing and engineering for the state-of-the-art equipment that we manufacture and that we design and test there on the base. But as well as that, we've had a few changes and a few updates that I want to provide on some of the mission stuff that we do. The Joint Warfare Analysis Center, JWAC, has continued to support combatant commands in everything that the combatant commands do, from long-term strategy to targeting, and they're fully integrated in the Intelligence Committee and likely going to become even more integrated in the intelligence community. And that's a growth industry there. They plan to expand, so there's a likely growth to JWAC, which is a great thing. It's our only joint asset on base. We now have the Space Force. So last time anyone was here talking to you, the Space Force was just a notional thing. I personally transferred a whole bunch of Air Force people into the Space Force earlier this year. That Space Force is a detachment right now. It is going to grow to be a squadron. So again, we're going to expand in that respect. These folks do command and control and deconfliction of 25,000 things floating around in space. They're the ultimate command and control and deconfliction site for everything. So strangely, of all the things that are important on the base, as the installation commanding officer, this Space Force is literally our #1 priority because of what they do for national security. So it's great to have them there, and they are very much growing. The Aegis Training Readiness Center continues to train fire controlmen all the way up to department heads to go out on ships and operate state-of-the-art technology. They're expanding to bring in other services. We're going to start training Coast Guard. We're going to start training Army. Again, another growth thing, which is great for us to increase the military footprint on base. Right now, we're 85% civilian contractors, 15% military, so it'd be great to get a few more uniforms on base. We've also, as everyone heard today, our EOD mobile unit today over at Pumpkin Neck did 2 large demolitions, demills of some ordnance. It was really loud, I apologize, but that's the sound of freedom. But they're doing fantastic work, and they are also a regional capability that responds both to everything up in Washington, D.C. They also respond here locally outside the gate for any sort of ordnance issues that may happen here. And the last thing that we've added in there is the Joint Military Attaché Service. So these are the folks that work with State Department, but they're uniformed military that go and they serve as attachés in embassies around the world. During COVID, that program kind of got into a bind. They couldn't figure out where to train and really where to put these people through a lot of different scenario training. They called us and we said, sure, we can make that happen. So they started training both at Dahlgren. They did a little bit over at Pumpkin Neck as well as Indian Head. And they found out this is a great fit for them. It's far enough kind of off the grid that they can do all kinds of sort of creative training, but it really is something that helps them out there. So we're still working through that relationship, but having a link there to State Department through the military is something that I find very useful, and it's a rewarding experience. We did host Secretary Hopkins and Deputy Secretary Jabs from the Governor's Office for Veterans Affairs, took them through everything on base. Secretary Hopkins is heading off to become a JAG, go back to out of reserve duty into active duty, and she'll be taking over until the end of the governor's term. But they got to see what it is about the base. And I think the way forward in the base is really, really growth. And we've talked gates, we've talked infrastructure. Every week at South Potomac is Infrastructure Week because we need help with that, and we're constantly using our budget process to ask for upgrades in that. For the community, mutual aid. We had a fire at the Warfare Center a couple months ago, and as I stood there with the Surface Warfare Commander, King George trucks were rolling right by, Colonial trucks were rolling right by, and they're right there with us. I know the fires that we've had out in town here, our mutual aid is able to respond. It's mutually beneficial, but it's also great for us to be able to continue our readiness and our training. We have a limited capacity, so as King George grows, we hope that the emergency infrastructure continues to grow with it so we can kind of maintain that balance, and that's where Thomas as a CIPLO can kind of help with that planning and understanding those kinds of assumptions that we have through Navy District Washington on mutual aid. We also did Citadel Shield Solid Curtain, which is a massive event that is a nationwide anti-terrorism force protection event. For these, they sort of randomly pick different bases to have these huge events on. And for me, being the first time here as the CO, they picked Dahlgren randomly as the only base east of the Mississippi to have a mass casualty event. So we had a simulated improvised device go off in the barracks. Simultaneously, one went off outside of our craft tech. 4 simulated fatalities, a lot of wounded, EOD. We worked with King George. We worked with a lot of other partners out in town to see how we would respond to that. It came out really well, and I thank you, Sheriff, for your folks in helping out with that. But it's one of those things that Dahlgren was in the spotlight, and the entire East Coast was looking at us to see how do we respond, what do we do for these mass tragedy events. Like I said, with Tom Stanley here, we've signed off on, I think we're just about completely done with 2 IGSAs with King George for our wastewater treatment chemicals as well as waste removal from base. So I think we're very close to being complete on that, if not completely completed on it. And we're very, very much open to other ideas to help some mutually beneficial agreements that we have here with King George. So we've got 2 really smart people, way smarter than me, that can continue to work through those. COVID-19 has been the focus of my command since I took over on July 10th. We are currently in health protection condition Charlie, and we go from a nothing to an alpha to Bravo to Charlie, and it can get worse than that. Charlie means that if you're in uniform, I can't go into a sit-down restaurant. I can't go into a store. I can't do anything unless it's essential, which means I can go in a super Walmart, I can get groceries, I can get what I need, and I got to get out. That's been in place since November. We started it last spring, came out of it a little bit, and then had to go back in. So we've been through the holidays. Massive financial impact, I know, outside the fence line. It's also a stress impact inside the fence line. One of the biggest challenges that I've had and that military commanders around the world have had is the mental health of our sailors. Statistically, uniformed military has a higher suicidal rate than any other demographic due to the stress, due to family separation, and a variety of reasons. Now you tell them that they can only go to Super Walmart to get food and come back out, and otherwise you have to stay in the barracks for months at a time. They can't see their parents, they can't have visitors come in. It's a huge stressor and something that we've been dealing with, to include underage drinking, alcohol abuse, as well as mental health and depression. So we are pushing very hard at this point to get ourselves out of HBCon Charlie and into what we call a Bravo Plus, which alleviates a lot of that for the mental health side of it for the sailors, but it allows them to get back out to the community with CDC protocols, masks, and all that kind of stuff, but get back out in the community. So we anticipate days or weeks will be there. And I know that's pretty a broad spectrum, but it's at the 4-star level direction right now on when we go there. Our statistics right now show that we should be in a Bravo Plus situation, and we're waiting for some OSD guidance to come down to clarify that, but we will get there. That will also allow our DoD school to open. We have one of the only DoD schools in the country that's closed right now. We have capacity for 350 students there. We have about 65 that are registered. We can do it safely, but DoD does not allow their schools to open until we go to Bravo. So it's best for everyone that we get there, and our anticipation is that we're going to get there very soon. One of the last things we'll talk about is the force protection that's going on base and out in town. Like this building, all the flags at South Potomac have been at half-mast more than they haven't in the month of April. They're there today for the passing of the former vice president, but prior to this, nearly every single day this month, it's been because of a shooting. We've had, and Sheriff knows this way better than I do, but the way station shooting that happened a couple weeks ago right outside B-Gate caused us to respond and up our force protection posture. Last week, shooting due to some road rage issues outside of Fort AP Hill. That happens in one installation. Every installation starts to adjust their force protection conditions. So even as recently as 3 hours ago, we received a request from Navy District Washington to have people on a two-hour prepare to deploy order pending the recent verdict that was just read on however it was going to come out for Navy District Washington. So we've heightened our training. We haven't formally changed our force posture, but we have definitely increased our random anti-terrorism measures. We're looking a lot more at a lot more cars and doing a lot more stuff, but there is definitely a heightened sense of tension, but there's a heightened sense of awareness that we're right now using on base. So I just ask for your understanding on that. It will impact how people can come on base. It affects how fast they can get on base, but we're doing that to make sure that all the folks, the 11,000 people that drive on that base every day can do so safely. And the last thing I want to say on a positive note is that once we get out of this HTV Con Charlie into Bravo, we are ready to go forward with community relations and community engagements and do a lot more. Get out in town. We have a lot of sailors and a lot of people that want to go out and help with community projects. So we are open for business for that. We're open to ideas. We've done some stuff out with Colonial Beach and beach cleanup, but we are very much ready to do that. My CIPLO is one that can coordinate it, as well as my public affairs officer. We're pushing forward as per the president's direction on 4th of July, hoping that we can do some sort there, probably not bringing non-DoD holders in, but hopefully doing something there to help out the folks that can get on base. So that is my report. I will pause there if you have any questions, but I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Questions from members?
Nope, just thank you for coming out, Captain Copeland, and briefing us.
Thank you.
Mr. Stonehill?
Just thanks for coming out, and yes, those booms were incredible. I was right there on the creek on a roof and just happened to look across and saw the huge mushroom cloud, and it was really strange. We actually turned around, we looked, and we said, why no sound? Oh my God. It just about blew us off top of the roof. And then it did another one. But yes, that was quite impressive. So look forward to having all the folks from Dahlgren and the sailors be able to get out. So hopefully that will clear up for you guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Ms. Bender?
No, I just want to thank you for coming out and giving a thorough presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Captain, for coming out tonight. The boom, America. I definitely heard it. I do have one question, though. You were talking about the mass casualty simulated event with a lot of injuries and 4 casualties. I was curious as to how it worked out being King George's proximity to a hospital. How did it work out? Did y'all involve mutual aid for ambulances, transportation? Were there any delays? Was the event able to be responded to accordingly? Did you have the numbers you needed to respond? If you could elaborate on that, sir.
No, and thank you, sir, for the question. We are, and I say this not in an arrogant way, we're very good at mutual aid because we exercise it all the time, because we have to. We need each other for that, just like in your report with the numbers. We need each other for that. So some of it had to be simulated due to COVID and things like that. So we were doing some of it via tabletop exercise, but ambulances coming in, emergency fire coming in, we do that often enough, and we send people out. That was good. And we also have a very good relationship with King George. We stole one of their deputy sheriffs to be our deputy chief of police. And that relationship has been fantastic, and we love having him. But we're good at that. Where our challenge was medevac. Of getting, because we had a larger number of casualties, of getting them out, and getting a helicopter here was the slowest thing, and that was simulated, of course, but getting a helicopter here to get I think we had 10 injuries and 4 fatalities, and it was unknown as it was going on, but get that right. I think that was the sort of the choke point there. The fire trucks were here, the ambulances were great, but getting them to the proper level trauma treatment center was a challenge that we took home and said, hey, we need to figure this out. Due to the nature of it, it was in the simulation, it was immediately ruled as either domestic terrorists or for domestic terrorists, kind of figuring that out. FBI was very quick to respond, and so they were able to get us resources. But if it wasn't something like that, if it was just sort of a mass casualty event that wasn't related to something that FBI got involved in, that's a challenge for us as medevac out of here if we had more than a couple people.
Thank you very much, Captain, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Captain Copeland, thanks again for coming out tonight. I did not realize that Space Force Command and Control was now one of your installations. I think that's super cool, quite honestly. So thank you for that. Please don't apologize to us for the sound of freedom. We love having you in our community. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I saw you all put out vaccine info yesterday on Facebook for your population. So thank you for that. I did share that on my Facebook page. Hopefully that helps get your personnel back, from telework,
right.
Like you said.
If I could, I should have talked about that real quick. Today we stopped people coming in the gate and said, do you want a vaccine? Because we have extras. Once you open these, you got to get rid of them. So we're to the point, like any DoD ID card or anyone who has access to treatment to the clinic can get a vaccine on base. Right now we're doing Pfizer, so it's 16 and up to include dependents, things like that. Spouses are a little tougher of a GS's spouse is tougher, but we have a lot of vaccines right now. They kind of got there 2 weeks after we needed them. A lot of people got them elsewhere, but it's an ongoing kind of thing that we're going to be hopefully reaching out with King George and maybe figuring something out with that. But we're doing very well on vaccines on base, which is going to help us get out of this, Charlie.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And you mentioned the half-mast. I just want to thank you for mentioning that, because I actually want to thank Sheriff Giles, because something I did earlier this year was ask him, I reached out to him to see if he had someone who could take that on for us, because frankly, I had noticed in the past year since having this seat that our county buildings weren't very coordinated and didn't always do a good job of respecting that. So I just want to thank you for pointing that out. And thank Sheriff Giles and Deputy Shriver, who I'm sure would be here tonight if he didn't have a soccer game to coach. So thank you. Thank you again for everything you do.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Update on the Harry W. Nice Thomas Mack Middleton Bridge Replacement Project by Mr. Brian Wolf and Mr. Stephen Skippen. And I believe we may also have Mr. Earl Lewis, Deputy Secretary for Maryland DOT, online perhaps, but won't be presenting. Mr. Dines, can you tell us who all is teed up for that?
Okay.
Very good. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Yeah, will we be able to share our screen? Which one?
Mr. Dines says yes, if you would like, and which of your screens, whose screen would you like to share, sir?
Could we start? Brian's going to go first.
Yeah, this is Brian Wolf. I'll go first if that's okay, and then I'll hand it over to Steve for the second half of the presentation, if that's okay.
That will work, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, stand by one moment. Mr. Dines is working on it.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Brian Wolf. I am the Director of Project Development for the Maryland Transportation Authority and the overall contract manager for the Harry W. Nice, Senator Thomas Mack Middleton Bridge Replacement Project. Again, with me tonight is Mr. Stephen Skippen. He is with the Skanska Corman McLean joint venture. They are the authority's design build contracting team. And so we'll both be presenting portions tonight on the project. Just a brief agenda. I'll go through and just provide you some information on the overall team for the project, as well as a brief update on the design process to date, and then provide just some basic details of what the proposed bridge will look like. And then I will turn it over to Steve, and he will run through the more probably the more interesting portion of the presentation, which is some of the ongoing construction activities that I'm sure you're aware of out on the water, as well as on the Virginia and Maryland sides. So as I said, the contracting team for the project is Skanska Corman McLean joint venture. These three firms are local to the region, to Maryland and Virginia. And they bring with them a substantial amount of marine construction experience, which has been very key to getting the new bridge constructed, especially with the foundations in the river that we're currently building right now. Supporting them is a design team headed by AECOM. And they are supported by numerous local consulting firms, both in Maryland and Virginia. And this team has been feverishly working to get the design elements completed so that the contracting team can hit the ground running with the project and ramp up their operations. Something we have on this project that's somewhat unique is what we call an independent design quality manager. And that is being performed by the firm Century Engineering and supported by International Bridge Technologies. They're responsible for reviewing all of the design packages that are developed by the design team to ensure that all of the contract requirements are being met before the packages are released to the contractors to actually construct. Supporting the MBTA is a general engineering consultant, and that is a joint venture of JMT and WSP. And they are assisting us with various reviews, engineering reviews, and engineering support as the packages are developed by the design team. The GEC is assisting the authority with reviewing those packages as well. On the construction inspection side, the authority again has a team of regional consulting firms assisting us with the construction inspection of the various operations down at the site. And we have folks, monitoring the structural work, the roadway approaches, drainage, materials, the whole spectrum. And so we've had tremendous help with the local consulting firms on this project. So just a bit of an update on the schedule. We issued a limited notice to proceed to the Skanska Corman McLean team back in December of 2019. And that allowed some of the early design and preliminary engineering work to begin And then in March of 2020, we issued the full NTP, and that allowed for construction to then commence as well. And as of May of last year, we had issued our first package to RFC, which is ready for construction. And that was the foundation piling details that were used for the test program that we were driving piles in the late spring of last year to verify the foundation designs for the bridge. To date, we have processed over 90 design packages through the design builder and the IDQM and the authority. And of those, 23 packages have been released for construction. And what that means is the packages have been approved so that the work included in those plans is ready to be constructed by the contracting team. In addition to those, we've done numerous design and engineering reports related to hydraulics and geotechnical aspects, soils, things of that nature to support the project. And we have gone through several revisions of the NEPA reevaluation so that we are in compliance with the various federal requirements and environmental policies that the project needs to follow. This picture here is showing what the section of the bridge will look like. This is what the majority of the bridge will be. From the Virginia abutment through the low-level spans and up into what we call the high-level approach spans just before the navigational channel in the river. We will be using pre-stressed concrete girders to support a reinforced concrete deck. The girders are being fabricated in the area. They're actually being fabricated by Coastal Precast Systems down in Cape Charles, Virginia. The proposed bridge will carry 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction, and that will be barrier separated to increase the safety. Once you get over the navigational channel, the bridge itself will change to a steel girder supported superstructure. These are very large girders. They range from 9.5 feet to 12 feet deep, and they are several hundred feet long in order for us to achieve the required horizontal clearances for the Coast Guard for the navigational channel. Again, it will be carrying 4 lanes across, 2 in each direction with the median barrier separating them. Just a bit of a comparison of the proposed bridge with the existing nice bridge. Again, we'll be carrying 4 12-foot lanes on the proposed bridge, whereas the existing bridge currently has just 2 11-foot lanes. Additionally, we will have the barrier separation in the median to separate the directions of traffic, whereas currently the existing bridge does not have that safety feature. We are providing some minimal shoulders to just provide a little bit of cushion and some additional safety for the traveling public crossing the bridge. The facility itself, when the new bridge is open, it will be using all electronic tolling. The toll plaza that is currently on the Maryland side will be dismantled and it will not be there. It will be replaced with a gantry system with sensors and equipment on it. So you will need to utilize Easy Pass. So I'll just sort of do a quick plug here. If you haven't gotten Easy Pass and you use the bridge quite often, please get an Easy Pass. It's the easiest way to take care of your tolls when you're crossing the bridge. And finally, the new bridge is set to have 100-year service life, whereas right now the existing bridge, being that it was built in 1940, is showing its age, and we're seeing increased maintenance costs to keep that bridge up and running as the years go by. So at this point, I will turn the presentation over to Steve, and he will run through the various operations that are currently out on the water and on the project site.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Yep, my name is Stephen Skippen. I represent the Skanska-Corman-McLean joint venture. We are the design builder that has been contracted by the authority to build this project. I would like to echo Brian's sentiments to all of our design partners and consultants working on the project. We have a truly tremendous team out here, and we really appreciate the ongoing partnership from Maryland Transportation Authority and the Virginia Department of Transportation. So a little construction update here. I'm going to blow through a bunch of slides and have some images of some of the things that we are enjoying doing here every day on the project. Just a small overview here. We did get the intent to award the project from MDTA on October 4th, 2019. And then we later executed a contract on January 24th, 2020. We received a notice to proceed on March 17th of 2020. And I'll walk you through in the next coming up slides some of the things that we've done since that date of March 17th, 2020. The original design build contract value is listed here. It's $462,957,000. So that is the contract value. And then just some general overview of our sequence and the timeline. This is actually on our website, newnicebridge.com. So would certainly encourage the public and anyone to follow that website. And we do put on monthly pictures, monthly drone videos, and also a lot of public announcements on that website. But really starting off driving concrete piles and building the approaches kind of kicked off simultaneously, both on the Maryland and Virginia side. And we're now into building foundations, piers, and the bridge is starting to go vertical, as you'll see in the coming slides. Our next big push is installing girders out on the project. That's going to happen later this year, with deck and roadway barriers into late next year. And then in the winter of 2022-23, we will open up the new bridge to traffic. I will not play this video, but there is a 4-minute overview video that's very informative, and it is on the website as well. So I do encourage anyone to watch this video. It gives a good sequence of construction, and it's a good 4-minute watch. So what have we done since we've been awarded? We did open up an office in Baltimore near the authority's office to run the design phase out of in White Marsh, and then we've situated our project hub office down at the 301 truck stop on the Maryland side in Newburgh. And we have 3 sets of trailers here. We have the SCM trailers, Skanska-Corman-McLean to the right, the larger set of trailers for the construction operation team. The mid-size trailer is the Maryland Transportation Authority, who's housing the inspection team. And then we have a safety trailer, which is the smaller set of trailer to run our safety program here on the job. We have a couple of laydown areas. We have a portion there of Wayside Park, which will be the new right-of-way where we're building the approach. And then on the Maryland side, we have leased the Aqualand Marina for the duration of the project, and we're using that for staging and laydown. Unique to this project, just due to its proximity and pours being out in the middle of the river and the time that takes to batch concrete and get pours out to the point of placement, we did create our own batch plant. So we have an on-site batch plant on the Maryland side. It's a dry batch system that is fed out through a series of conveyors that then drops you into 2 transport barges that are then moved out to the point of placement where a placing boom can place concrete at any location on the project, heights up to 140 feet and low, high, and wherever we need to place, we have that capability to do that out on the water. So one of the first things we did, starting in March, COVID hit and we worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with a very minimal operation to take borings out on the river. So we took samples all across the river at every pile bent, and that operation concluded around the June timeframe, which allowed for our design to progress once we was able to understand the geological conditions out in the river. This is just a quick section here of the river itself. As you may know, that it's very shallow waters for almost a third of the bridge from the Virginia shoreline. And then down closer to the Maryland shoreline is where water is at its deepest, 81 feet. I will say we are complete with most of the pile driving now through the deeper, more challenging areas of the project, so we're real happy to have a lot of that more challenging work behind us. We also worked while the river borings were ongoing. We did the same thing on land, and we took a series of borings on both the Maryland and the Virginia side just to support the roadway design. Some of the early things that we did on the project was clearing and grubbing and erosion control. This is specifically on the Maryland side in these images. And, minimal amounts of work, but we are committed to our environmental commitments, and we have a lot of eyes and public agencies watching us on this project, and we really take this seriously. So this was one of the first aspects before we did any kind of land disturbance on the project. In the Aqualand Marina area, we realigned Orland Park Road to allow for the new approach roadway to be built. And then out on US 301, again on the Maryland side, we built a safe work zone, where you can see the concrete barrier with the orange glare screen on it. And that allows us to have a safe work zone behind barrier for our crews to work. And we move traffic, just a minor traffic shift into the shoulder. The roadways on the Maryland side are under construction right now. We have brought the Maryland abutment up to grade pretty much at this point. And you can see this is the use of our laydown areas. The batch plant is on the image on your right-hand side when that was under construction. And pretty much all of our material deliveries would either come by water or they would get loaded out onto this Maryland trestle that extends out, a pier that extends out into the river. The bridge is starting to go vertical. Here you see this was one of our first footings poured on the project and first set of columns that have gone up in the air. So the bridge is now starting to go vertical, more so on the Maryland approach, and will be extending out here on the river very soon. Here you can see an image out from the river of the completed foundations, column, and pier cap, and later this summer we will be landing girders, the bridge beams, on top of these pier caps. Pile driving on the Maryland approach is complete, so that work is now completed. On the Virginia side, we had a period of surcharge on the Virginia side that is completed, and now we're into full swing of roadway approach construction there on the Virginia side. That's currently ongoing as we speak. We did have one minor operation to complete just to gain access to the very shallow areas of the shoreline. So we had a minor dredging operation for around 18,000 yards of material that was removed that will allow our floating equipment to get into the work zone. Here's a couple of images of our trestle. So again, we have an access trestle on the Maryland side. There's a temporary trestle, and that's how we load out our personnel and some of our materials and equipment out from the shoreline. And we're now in the swings of installing a similar kind of trestle on the Virginia side, which will help us build the first set of pier bents that's in the very shallow areas. Pile driving is well underway here at this point. As I said, we've pretty much wrapped up everything in the deep water areas on the Maryland side now, closest to the Maryland shoreline, and we're out past the main navigable channel now, working our way towards the Virginia side. We did have a series of pile load tests to complete early in the project as the geological conditions changed throughout the river, throughout the 2-mile stretch of the river, and they were successfully completed also. Production pile, as I said, now is in full swing, and as you can see in this image on your right-hand side, the large 28 and 21 pile clusters are completed there, and we are moving into the next phase of construction. Foundations on this project, they are pre-stressed concrete pile. As Brian mentioned earlier, our precast products are being manufactured in Cape Charles and Chesapeake, Virginia, and pretty much most of our deliveries come up and down the Chesapeake Bay and up the Potomac River to the project. We have around 740 36-inch pre-stressed concrete pile on the job. We're about 40% complete with those at this point. And then we had 80 66-inch pre-stressed concrete cylinder pile at the main channel, and they are now complete. We have these big, large footing tubs, so kind of a public request announcement here. These are, in excess of 100-ton picks. They require great precision and placement when they are up in the air. And we do have a pretty big campaign going now to make no wake in the river. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but as we're doing these large picks and we have people up in the air on man lifts and out on platforms, we really need a calm river for us to safely be able to perform our work. But there's 33 of these. We've completed 6. We'll complete another 4 in the coming days. So we're well underway now with setting these large precast footing tubs, which we will soon fill with rebar concrete, and that will be the foundation for our columns to start going up in the air for the bridge to go vertical out on the river. Precast girders, we do have precast girders also on this job. They are well underway in production now in, again, Cape Charles, Virginia. We'll start erecting those this summer from the Maryland shoreline, working out towards the river. And then we will probably switch to the Virginia shoreline and work our way in from 2 headings. This is kind of a panned out rendering of the new bridge once it is completed. We have a very busy 2021 and 2022 ahead. We're really just now ramping up with our equipment out here on the job. I think we have 13 or 14 cranes now out there on the project. Majority of those are out on the river. We have more showing up in the coming days and weeks. And real soon, it's just going to be a real busy summer for us here on the project, and hopefully a neat spectacle to see for the traveling public as well. Once we are complete with the work, we will demolish the old bridge. We'll safely dismantle that. We'll try and remove some of this to an artificial reef. We're working with Potomac River Fisheries for possibilities on that, but that is a little further down the line. But the bridge demolition is scheduled for 2023 and 2024. And here's a final rendering, and of course, we're looking forward to a ribbon cutting here at some point in the winter of 2022-23, and opening this bridge that a lot of us local to the project are real passionate about building. So just one more thing here, public notices. These are posted on the website newnicebridge.com. They also go out to our stakeholder database list. They're also posted across MDTA and I believe VDOT's social media pages. But the big one here on the right-hand side is we do have a 6-knot speed limit that was put into law as of around January this year. So half a nautical mile north of the bridge and half a nautical mile south of the bridge, there is buoys in there now that says 6-knot max speed, and the area is being enforced by several of the agencies, DNR and MDTA police. We just ask that everyone, really just be cautious going through our work zone, go at a slow pace, and stop any of the current from affecting our operations and the safety of our personnel. That's it for me. Again, there's the website link there. Do encourage people to go to that. We put a ton of information on it and a ton of time into that, and hopefully you found this presentation useful. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Questions from members?
I don't have any questions. I'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Wolf and Mr. Skippen. It was a very thorough presentation. I had some questions going a long way, but you answered every single one of them. So thank you for the presentation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stonehill?
I'm just going to say thanks for the presentation, guys. Very thorough and just really, really interesting to see how something like that is built from start to finish. So thanks for coming out.
Ms. Bender?
I have two questions. One is, as we see the approach coming down for the Virginia side, do you see any concerns with the Roslyn Road or the former Gateway Tourism, it's now the Dahlgren Heritage Museum?
No, actually, we've been coordinating on both of those, and actually with Roslyn Road, I believe we have some minor work to do there. And as far as the museum, we're not impacting the location of the museum. It's staying where it's at. And we've been coordinating all that approach work with the Virginia Department of Transportation to make sure that we're meeting all their requirements and everything. So no, we should not have any impact to those.
And then my last question is, I have been over the Bay Bridge in where the Delaware, Maryland on 301, where you have the fast lanes, and I've seen how it works with the Easy Pass. But I do have a question. Is it true that Virginia residents, it's Maryland Easy Pass, so is there a different charge between Maryland and in Virginia?
It's not a different charge. The toll gantries are for the bridge itself, which is owned by the Maryland Transportation Authority. So the toll is the same whether you're coming from Virginia or coming from Maryland.
Is it the same for a Maryland resident and a Virginia resident, or is there a discount? Some places have, if it's in that state and you're an Easy Pass holder, it's a little cheaper. That's my question.
No, I do not believe that is the case. It's just one toll. There's no differentiation between whether you're a Virginia resident or a Maryland resident.
Right. Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Bush?
No questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. I do have one question. Is there a restriction on the hours that your subs are allowed to do some of the noisier activities, specifically the pile driving? Part of why you're here, frankly, is I requested an update because I've heard from some constituents that some of the work is going on as late as midnight. And if there isn't, and I do realize, I appreciate the fact that you are behind, were at one point behind schedule due to COVID, and we're working 24 hours to catch up, and I really appreciate that, because I do think it's important to get this finished and open. But if there isn't a restriction on that, do you have a mechanism by which you could let us know, let the public know in advance, hey, on this set of dates, you can expect loud noise, so we can at least let our folks know in advance? Thank you.
So we understand that there have been instances where there has been late noise, and it's been from pile driving. Those have been very isolated, and they're not the typical or normal situation. We do not drive piles in the middle of the night. unfortunately, in those particular instances that have occurred, when you start the pile driving operation, you can't stop. There's things that happen if you stop in the middle of driving a pile. You can get what's called freeze, where the ground seizes up and it's near impossible to drive the pile the rest of the way after you come back to it. So in the cases that have occurred, there were issues with some of the equipment getting the operation started, but once it got started, we needed to finish the pile so that we didn't have problems with not getting it down to the correct elevation in the river bottom. But that's not the normal operation, and I think with us out of the critical, what we call the fish window, there's a fish restriction, an in-stream restriction that went into effect on March 15th. That would have stopped any of the pile driving over in the deep water side near the Maryland shore, but we've fortunately gotten out of that. So we are not anticipating any kind of late night operation like that moving forward, unless there would be just an odd situation where the operation got delayed for some reason, but we don't anticipate that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks again for the thorough presentation and the update. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you for having us.
All right, we'll move on to presentation by Ms. Marta Perry, District Manager, Tri-County City Soil and Water Conservation District.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Marta Perry, and I'm the District Manager for Tri-County City Soil and Water Conservation District. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. And on behalf of the Tri-County City Soil and Water Conservation District, I want to say I'm proud to be here to update you with some of the district's accomplishments recently. As you may know, soil and water conservation districts are public agencies, and Tri-County City Soil and Water Conservation District serves the 3 counties of King George, Spotsylvania, and Stafford, and the city of Fredericksburg. Soil and water conservation districts were formed across the country in the 1930s and 1940s as part of the national response to the grim effects of the Dust Bowl. During the era of the Dust Bowl, land was being stripped of its topsoil, which then was turning into dust that clogged the skies and people's lungs. To prevent this from happening again, soil and water conservation districts were formed, and Tri-County City was formed 77 years ago in 1944. We are one of 47 across the state. We are a non-regulatory agency governed by a board of 10 directors. We have 2 publicly elected directors from each locality for a total of 8, plus 2 state-appointed directors. And before I go any further, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge King George's 2 publicly elected directors, Ms. Janet Gale Harris and Mr. Bob Wernsman. So what do? We work to prevent flooding and erosion. We work to keep our soils healthy and to keep our waterways like the Rappahannock and the Potomac rivers clean and free of pollution. But how do we accomplish this? We work directly with our local governments, our farmers, and our residents to solve conservation challenges. We provide programs to support conservation projects and the use of conservation methods and practices on the ground. We have a range of programs focused on agricultural conservation, community conservation, and conservation education. Our agricultural program is our largest program. We offer agricultural producers the technical assistance and guidance of our trained staff to help address the soil and water challenges that many farmers face. We also administer the state-funded Virginia Agricultural Cost Share Program. Through the cost share program, the state provides our local farmers with financial assistance for using conservation methods on the ground in their operations. There we go. As part of the state's push to clean up the Chesapeake Bay by 2025, the state has recently significantly increased its focus on agricultural conservation and has asked the soil and water districts to greatly ramp up our work with farmers to get that funding turned into conservation on the ground. Starting in FY20, The state increased funding for cost share financial assistance for agricultural conservation. As a result, in FY20, Tri-County City worked with King George farmers to provide over $175,000 in state cost share financial assistance, which is more than double what we've been able to provide in any previous year. With this district financial assistance and the district's technical guidance, local farmers implemented a range of conservation practices. Instead of leaving fields bare and vulnerable to erosion over the winter, King George farmers planted over 10,000 acres of erosion-reducing winter cover crops. They converted almost 8.5 acres of land from high-intensity row cropping to erosion-controlling hayland, and converted 2 acres from high-intensity row crops into woods and forest. They implemented strategic fertilizer plans that prevent waste and pollution and save money on 2,500 acres of cropland. In addition to our work in agricultural conservation, we also offer what we call our community conservation programs. This includes administering the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or VCAP for short, which offers financial assistance for implementing a range of projects on land with existing development. All of the projects that VCAP covers help better handle stormwater runoff and reduce the pollution, the soil erosion, and the property damage that stormwater runoff can create. For years, the water quality at Fairview Beach has been in question. We've been one of the lead partners in the joint effort to investigate the water quality at Fairview Beach. Tri-County City has served as the project coordinator of the effort, and together with the Virginia Department of Health, King George County Service Authority, King George County, and the Fairview Beach Residents Association, we have made great progress. In particular, I'd like to thank Steve Valentine, Kyle Comboy, Mike Bennett, Herb Cover, and Don Faltzgraf for their work. Together, we were able to partner with Raul Gonzalez and Danny Barker, who are environmental scientists at the Hampton Roads Sanitation District. And we were able to partner with them for some scientific detective work over at Fairview Beach. As you probably know all too well, there has long been a question of whether there is human waste polluting the water at Fairview Beach. However, using the common water quality testing methods, testing for E. coli in the water, we haven't been able to answer that question. That's because this most common form of water testing for E. coli, will only indicate total fecal matter contamination, but it won't tell you what the source of the contamination is. Is it from pets? Is it from geese, deer? Or is it from humans, which is the most dangerous kind of contamination for human health? Hampton Roads Sanitation District has a state-of-the-art laboratory for testing water samples with what is called PCR testing. You may have heard of it. PCR testing is also what is used to identify if someone is sick with COVID-19. With Hampton Roads' technology, they can definitively answer the question of whether there is or is not human waste contaminating the water. As many of you heard earlier this evening when Raul Gonzalez of Hampton Roads reported to the County Service Authority, Hampton Roads conducted 2 rounds of water testing over the summer of 2019 and the summer of 2020 in both wet weather and dry weather conditions. Based on that testing, using the most modern methods to identify pollution from human waste, Hampton Roads Sanitation District determined that there is no chronic contamination from human fecal waste in the waters at Fairview Beach. This is quite a happy outcome, since for years it has been suspected that there was. By combining our strong working partnership and taking advantage of the most advanced technology, Tri-County City is proud to have been part of finding the answer to this nagging question. In addition to our work in ag conservation and community conservation, we also focus on conservation education. A key component of our education program is the many indoor and outdoor class activities we offer for K-12 school and homeschool teachers and students. All of our lessons are correlated with the Virginia Standards of Learning, and many are drawn from the Project WET curriculum, which is recommended by the National Association of Science Teachers and is aligned with the National Common Core Standards. Like most aspects of education, COVID-19 has had a big impact on our programs. During the pandemic, our education coordinator has shifted to include presenting lessons to students online as well as in person. and is also working to record lessons that teachers can access on demand. Despite the pandemic, in the last 9 months, our education coordinator has managed to reach 230 King George County students. During the pandemic, we have also been working hard to expand our social media outreach. We've significantly increased our activity, including regularly posting resources for our teachers. Our Facebook followers have risen by nearly 30% in the last 9 months, from 365 followers to a big 478 followers. And our reach has risen by over 50%, with our posts being viewed by over 6,500 Facebook users. We offer a lending library of materials to teachers and community members, including maps, books, models, and related science equipment. We offer college scholarships for the study of conservation-related subjects. We hold an annual conservation art poster contest, and we provide scholarships to conservation summer camp. We could not provide our member localities and our residents with the services we do without the critical support provided by local government, and we are grateful for the support of King George. I'm very proud of our history together. I'd like to close by saying thank you for your ongoing support and collaboration, and we look forward to what the future holds for our partnership. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Perry, thank you for coming out. You talked about the bay and the plan to have it cleaned up by 2025. Are we going to get there?
We sure can try. We are full steam ahead.
Okay.
So.
Cautiously optimistic?
That sounds wise.
Okay. Awesome. It's good to hear. My understanding is the bay used to be clear, like crystal clear water, which obviously it's not now.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice if we could get back to that at some point.
Yes, indeed.
I appreciate the Fairview Beach update as well, and thank you for sharing the information about the human waste, because that's always been a concern, I know. Let me ask though, in general, even if it's not human waste, if it's from animals, does that area have a higher contamination rate than the average area of E. coli?
It does.
Okay.
However, the weakness of the E. coli indicator is that it could, we know it could indicate different types of animals besides the human animal.
Okay.
So we don't know whether it's, pets or geese or deer.
Mm-hmm.
There's also E. coli that can get, what did Raul say today? Said that the sediment gets inoculated with it.
Oh, interesting.
And the sediment can
hold it there.
take residence in the sediment.
Ooh.
So but that's the E. coli, which is not the thing that's actually dangerous to us.
Okay.
So there's a question of whether, if it's not human, that's great, because that's the most dangerous kind of contamination. If
Agreed.
It's from geese or pets, it's dangerous, but not as dangerous. And then if it's in the sediment, my understanding is that it doesn't pose that serious of a risk to you.
Okay.
So we've eliminated the most dangerous issue, and we are in the process of, I think we might wind up outsourcing testing to another laboratory, because Hampton Roads is back up with the COVID-19 issue with the demands that they're facing.
So if it does come out that it's some animal, would there be some mitigation activities that could be taken to help address it?
It's certainly possible. I mean, when it comes to wildlife, your options are limited. The thing that we have the most influence over is pets.
Okay.
So, and we have installed some pet waste stations in Fairview Beach, and regularly provide them with new stock of bags. So, but those are the easiest measures to address. And then if it turns out to be, if it's geese, if you can figure out where they're flocking, you may be able to sort of nudge them to relocate.
Okay.
But yeah, your options are kind of limited.
Okay.
So
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Mr. Stonehill?
That was kind of my question as well.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's non-human. Still trying to find out what it is exactly and where it's coming from. And talking about like the where else on the river, how far up and down did you guys test in the river to find that?
It was very limited to what is officially Fairview Beach, to just west of the trailer park area down to where the pump station is and down by the marina. So we covered the entire crescent of the beach, if you're familiar with it. So we didn't go over into Potomac Landing. We went and looked to see if there were any water sources there that might be relevant, but it didn't flow into the area that we were focusing on. So we wound up just focusing exclusively on Fairview Beach.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, just you guys do a great job in trying to get the education out to farmers and people who use the water. It's even well up in the mountains, as you well know, affects. We're the bottom of the drain here, so everything comes down to us. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Ms. Bender?
I just want to thank you for all your work and being good stewards of the Bay.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Mr. Bush?
So thank you very much. You guys have been great partners with the Fairview Beach Residents Association. I recall attending numerous roundtables with the residents, and Mr. Bennett going on, and he's been great for that community, and you guys have been very wonderful partners in getting this resolved. Well, the shoreline part resolved, still trying to find out what the contamination issue is, but this was great news that it doesn't seem to be related with human waste. So thank you very much for everything you've done, not just recently, but over the years.
Well,
thank you.
We're proud to have done it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight, Ms. Perry. Can we, Mr. Kusenberry, we have Dr. Gonzalez's presentation to the Service Authority Board of Directors. Could you please forward that to our colleagues on this board who didn't receive it? And I think that'll answer Mr. Stonehill's question specifically. Thank you, sir. Thank you, as always, for everything you do.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yes, ma'am. You too. And let me ask staff, would you like a short break or would you like to move forward with 5 minutes? That's what I would suggest, if that's okay with everyone. 5 minutes, Mr. Bush? It's 5, sir. All right, we will take a short 5-minute break. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Let's resume the meeting, and we will start with the public hearing for the proposed cigarette tax ordinance. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a public hearing that has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding the proposed cigarette tax ordinance. I will first ask for the staff report. I will then open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight, depending on information received during public comment. And Mr. Britton, I believe you're going to handle the staff report on this matter. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
So there's a memo that I put in there. It's in the board packet. I'm not going to read it, but basically 2 counties, cities and towns could tax cigarettes until this year, coming up on July 1st, reasons unbeknownst to me. And then this year, the General Assembly allowed all localities to tax cigarettes, which dumped a bunch of counties in, including King George. And obviously being on the border of Maryland, there's a lot of cigarette sales. Mr. Stonehill, who's on the board, actually is an expert in this area and used to head up there was a lot of illegal cigarettes moving up 301. And BATF used to work with the Sheriff's Office. And so we know quite a bit about this, but localities were able to tax, but not counties, except for Arlington, Fairfax. So we are now in the position where the board has asked us to study a tax, put together a committee, Mr. Stonehill, myself, and a number of others, including tax commissioner and what have you. We reviewed a whole lot of ordinances that were in existence, mainly city ordinances for obvious reasons. Independent ordinances, small cities, big cities, regional ordinances. We met with the Northern Virginia Tax Board, talked to the Northern Neck about whether to create another tax board. And the committee made a recommendation to go it on our own, since we would be the big fish in that pond in the Northern Neck. A large amount of cigarettes sold and transported in King George County. Basically what it says is that in addition to the state tax, county can tax. State stamps it, county stamps it. It's a complex series of procedures that get it that way, and so we studied not just what the ordinance should be, but how it would be implemented, because you can pass an ordinance, but then what do you do next? So mainly Mr. Stonehill spearheaded the procedures, designing the stamp, getting the stamp, ordering the stamp, paying for the stamp, getting the stamp on there, making sure the stamp doesn't get pulled off, getting the stamp to the wholesalers, getting the wholesalers to sell only stamped cigarettes, finding out whether the retailers are selling only stamped cigarettes. What do you do with cigarettes that are already on site, that they've already brought from the wholesalers? Who is going to inspect it? Who's going to seize it? What are we going to do with seized cigarettes? What are we going to do with the assets of the seized cigarettes? How are we going to audit the wholesalers? How are we going to audit the retailers? How is the tax going to be collected, and how is it going to be distributed? So there's a lot of moving parts. But a lot of people have done this for a long time, so they've been very generous with their time. So tonight, what is being advertised is the ordinance portion of it, sort of the enabling portion. You pass the ordinance, and then everything else rolls. Hire the person in the commissioner of the revenue, outfit the sheriff to do oversight and inspections and possibly seizures. And make a determination in the budget of what you may do with the prospective revenues. I think that the estimate was $4 million at this time. A lot of cigarettes go sales. There used to be these old reports, the STAR reports, right? And we don't get those anymore, so it's very hard to estimate the amount of cigarettes being sold. So that's the overall, the big picture. I did want to say that the ordinance is pretty comprehensive. We went big instead of small because you can always amend it. There's nothing in here that is wrong. There may be some things that we over time tweak or don't use, and we may be able to pare it down, but we didn't want to find ourselves in the situation in the beginning where we didn't have enough. And we're like, uh-oh, we forgot to define dealer or retail dealer or wholesaler. So I went big on the ordinance. Fortunately, there's some oversight. There's some people in the Wholesalers Association, the Retailers Association, the Tobacco, and they all seem to call, ranging from, we don't care what your tax is, we just want to make sure that it's implemented correctly too. We really don't want you to have a tax. So the committee also fielded all of those types of things. One fella from Richmond Association, Wholesaler Association called, and he pointed out that there was an error in the proposed ordinance, and so I've amended that, and I'm going to read that so that you can, if you pass this, vote on the amended ordinance. The other thing is that he asked, and I'll let Mr. Stonehill take this up, he asked that we provide a discount of 2% to the wholesalers who are purchasing the stamps to offset their paperwork. Which is, they then turn over to us, and he called it helping us do our taxes. I asked him for a matrix of the other localities throughout Virginia, which ones, it's not required by law, which ones provide this discount and how much, and he did not have that. He did provide an ordinance coming up from one of the local counties, Amherst, I believe, and they're giving a 2% discount, I believe. But that was put forth, I put forth that information to the committee. And I believe the committee's recommendation is not to provide a discount at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Britton.
One other thing that I
Yes,
guess
sir, go
is
ahead.
the important thing, in addition to the ordinance, is the rate. The rate is a maximum of 2 cents per cigarette, which is 40 cents per pack. The committee is recommending, Mr. Stonehill can correct me, he's the head of it, but as I understand it, the committee is recommending the maximum tax, and that puts us extremely competitive in Virginia with the retail price of cigarettes across the bridge, you know, basically still half. So it adds 40 cents a pack. And I think Mr. Stonehill was looking at cigarettes in the $7, $8, $9. And of course, you get up to New York, Chicago, where they have the double and triple tax. Whatever the cigarettes cost, they double it or triple it. You're in the $10 to $15 a pack. So I only say that because we did take into consideration that retailers could be affected in their sales, and those sales are taxes as well. Nothing in comparison to the cigarette tax. So we have a comprehensive ordinance which has a recommended sales tax of the maximum of 2 cents per cigarette, 40 cents per pack. And when it gets time to consider this, I'd like to read the amendment.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And if I can ask quickly, Mr. Kusenberry, the next public hearing, the budget, that was crafted based on the 40 cents, right?
That's correct.
Before we move forward. Thank you, sir. Okay, does anyone have questions for Mr. Britton? All right, then I would like to go ahead and invite Mr. Stonehill as a member of the committee. Do you have anything to add, sir?
Just talking about the prices of cigarettes, you know, I was over in Maryland the other day and I actually stopped and I just took the most popular cigarette in Newport, and I looked over there, and since they just increased their taxes over there, one single pack of Newports over there in Maryland is $11. So, you know, even with ours is going to be, you know, maybe that same cigarette pack is going to be maybe $7.40, maybe $7.50 here with a 40-cent tax on it. So I really don't think it's going to $6.80.
Yeah, I bought a pack today, $6.40.
Okay. I really don't think it's going to affect the sales, especially with the folks coming over the bridge. I know down in the Dahlgren district over here on the weekends, if you hit the Wawas and the Sheets, and I mean, it's just a nonstop line of folks buying cigarettes. It's just unbelievable amount of cigarettes going out right now. Yes, and the committee did recommend a 40-cent tax. That was a unanimous one.
And then also what Mr. Britton stated, decline to grant the 2% discount or whatever it was called.
Yes, I had never heard of that before. That was the very first time any of us have heard of it. And we ran that past the committee as well. And they also said no, that we just forego that one.
Okay, thank you. And I note Sheriff Giles is here in the audience this evening. Sheriff Giles, do you have anything you wish to add before we move on with public comment? Thank you, sir. All right, very good. Then I will open the floor for public comment. As a reminder, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Is anyone here in the audience who wishes to speak? And I did not have anyone sign up on the sign-up sheet. Mr. Dines, do you have anyone online for the cigarette tax ordinance public comment? Very good. I will close public comment. I will ask my colleagues if any written statements were received that were requested to be entered as public comment. No? Very good then. All right. I will now bring the matter back to the board for consideration. Again, we may or may not take action tonight, depending on information received during public comment.
Madam Chair, if I could, before you consider, there are no section numbers now because we haven't put it into Municode, but under refund for unused stamps, what happened is if they bought the stamps and then they weren't going to use them, then we have to give them their money back. And the way it used to be was that we would take out 5%. The localities would take 5%, and they've changed that. And that's what this fellow from Richmond called and said, you can't do that anymore. And he was right. So I would ask that you consider a motion, if you don't change anything else, as presented with the amendments, removing the 5% discount on the refund for unused stamps.
Thank you, Mr. Britton.
And that won't cause another advertisement to be, that's not like changing the rate or anything like that.
Great. All right, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the motion as presented with the amendment of removing the 5% discount on unused stamps.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your hard work on this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, at least we used to make a motion to have staff send it to MuniCode for codification. Do we need, yeah, because that changes the.
Do I have a motion to authorize staff to submit the new ordinance to MuniCode?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Britton.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on with our second public hearing. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a public hearing that has been properly advertised to receive a public input regarding the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. I will first ask for the staff report. I will then open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight, depending on information received during public comment. And in fact, it is my understanding by law, we cannot take action for at least 7 days prior to tonight's public hearing.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Very good, thank you. So just so everyone is aware of that, this is for public comment discussion, but we will not, we cannot by law take action this evening. All right, very good. So let's start with the staff report. Mr. Kusenberry.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm happy to present the FY 2021-2022 budget. I'm going to start with an overview of the budget process. In December 2020, the county administrator requested departments and agencies to prepare their budgets, and those submittals were due back to the finance department in mid-January 2021. Then for the next 2 months, the budget staff reviewed the submittals and had many meetings with the departments and the agencies. And following those reviews, the county administrator started his review and also met with some of the departments and agencies. This process is a little bit slower than in prior years, but we normally start this process in February. Then the board and the Citizen Advisory Committee held a number of work sessions. There was a total of six budget work sessions, starting on March the 3rd and continuing to April the 7th. During those work sessions, the committee and the Board of Supervisors received information on specific line items, reviews from the landfill, general properties, human resources, the treasurer, Board of Supervisors, social services, and oversight agencies. In addition, you received staffing reports and recommendations from community development, the sheriff, fire and rescue, including discussion of recruitment and retention, and human resources. You also received the school budget. You received information on the Parks and Recreation fee schedule, the Department of Community Development fee schedule, the Personal Property Tax Relief Act, the cigarette tax, and also at each of the work sessions, you received detailed information regarding expenditures and revenues. So at the last work session, that was April the 7th, the county administrator presented a final budget. The board at that time authorized the advertising of the budget and the tax rates. Tonight, you're conducting the public hearings on the budget and the tax rates. Then on May the 4th, the board will adopt the budget and the tax rates and then appropriate the funds in June. Some of the budget challenges, we discussed these at one of your work sessions. Of course, state funding. The state funding is 39% of our budget, so receiving accurate information and timely information is critical to our budget development. And the revenue outlooks, we had to be cautious this year with the uncertain impacts of COVID and how that was going to impact this year's budget. We discussed a reduction in the landfill revenue compared to previous years. We discussed public safety, recruitment, and retention, and I'll give more details on that in a later slide. We discussed the Department of Social Services increases and the reasons for those increases. They were primarily related to public assistance and the Children's Services Act. There's also impacts to county growth, and that affected the Community Development Department, the Sheriff, Emergency Services, and Social Services. The schools, obviously, it's a big part of your budget. In fact, it's 54% of the total county budget this year. We discussed that in the current year budget, there was a use of Revenue Stabilization Fund and General Fund reserves to balance the current year budget. But that's the reason those funds were established, and that's why you had a strong fund reserves, and it was appropriate to use those funds given the uncertainty of the budget this year. We discussed increases to the regional jail and juvenile detention, and we also had a new budget team working this year on the budget. Where happened, Chris? Oh, there we go. Continuing with the budget overview, the operating budget is an annual fiscal plan. It serves as a roadmap for implementing the Board of Supervisors' priorities. In preparing this budget, we were mindful that the budget environment continues to feature a degree of economic uncertainty and continues to be a serious challenge. In this budget, we tried to restore certain board priorities, and we continued board policies related to fiscal responsibility and service delivery. And we talked about increases and improvements to public safety, recruitment, and retention, priority related to education, social services, employee compensations, capital projects and debt mitigation, and facility maintenance. We included some additional funds this year in general properties budget to take care of some needed maintenance and requirements. Continue with the budget overview. In developing the current year budget, the revenue projections were wisely lowered in anticipation of the lingering effects of COVID and the economic impacts associated with that. However, due to the fiscal stability of the board and the fund reserves and the policies, we were able to use fund balances to offset the lowered projections. Many of the FY21 revenues are on pace and actually will exceed the budgeted amounts, and they'll also exceed FY20 actual revenue amounts. The FY22 budget includes new revenue from a real estate tax increase associated with the new courthouse and new revenue from the cigarette tax. The budget includes a fee increases associated with the fee schedules in the Department of Community Development. It continues investment in the workforce. And the budget addresses core needs of a growing population that impacts schools, public safety, social services, and county services. And the budget also includes transfers to restore county fund balances. The budget is fiscally responsible. It's in accordance with the county financial policies. The total county budget is $97,401,473. That 54% of that budget, $52,518,931 is associated with school items, the school operating budget, grants, and cafeteria. The non-school expenditures are just under $45 million. That's 46% of the total budget. The budget includes tax increases associated with debt for the construction of a new courthouse, resulting in a 3-cent increase in the real estate tax rate, and each penny results in $270,000 of additional revenue. And the proposed budget includes projected revenue from a 40-cent per pack cigarette tax. So the non-school expenditures, which is the 46% of the total budget, approximately $45 million, you can see where that goes. $35.1 million of that goes toward public safety, debt service, Department of Social Services, court services and constitutional officers, capital improvement fund, and institutions, oversight agencies, and the Virginia Department of Health. The remaining $9.7 million, which is 10% of the total county budget, funds the Board of Supervisors, County Administration, County Attorney, Human Resources, Economic Development, Department of Finance, Department of Community Development, IT, County Engineering Department, Landfill, Tourism, Parks and Recreation, Library, and Contingency. Some of the budget highlights: the property taxes and other local tax revenues increased by $8.4 million over the current year. And those are taxes associated with real estate, personal property, sales tax, BPOL, meals tax, the cigarette taxes included here, recordation tax, and motor vehicle licensing. The schools will receive $18,229,917 in local funding, which is an increase of $684,333 over the school current year, and the school ADM is based on 4,380 students. I discussed the funding was included for increases in the regional jail and juvenile detention, and includes a $590,000 transfer from the general fund balance for equipment purchases and other one-time purchases. And with regards to the cigarette tax revenue, $1 million is proposed to go toward the Revenue Stabilization Fund, $1.25 million to the Capital Improvement Fund, $500,000 to debt mitigation funds, and the cigarette tax will also provide $1.25 million for public safety recruitment and retention, plus 2 new positions. We're projecting that approximately $266,000 will be received for the new building permit fee schedule, which you will consider a resolution later tonight regarding that. And I discussed that landfill revenue decrease compared to previous years. Some other budget highlights. This budget includes some new positions and includes full year funding for 3 new positions in the sheriff's office. That would be 2 bailiffs and 1 position associated with the cigarette tax. 1 new position in the Commissioner of Revenue's office associated with the cigarette tax. 1 new position in the County Engineers Department, and that position will offset some higher costs that was in the community development budget for consulting services. 2 new positions in the Department of Community Development, and 1 part-time position in Human Resources. The budget also includes half-year funding for 6 new positions in the Department of Emergency Management. The budget includes implementation of a step grade system for public safety and an increase in certification pay. And it includes the increases we discussed in the Department of Social Services. Also included funding for merit increases for county employees and adjustments in some of the other county employees' positions that need some adjustments. And it includes a reduction in health insurance costs. With regards to the cigarette tax, this is what's been proposed. I discussed $1.25 million for 2 new positions and public safety recruitment and retention, $1 million transfer to the Revenue Stabilization Fund, $250,000 transfer for county debt mitigation, $250,000 transfer for Service Authority debt mitigation, and $1.25 million transfer to the Capital Fund. With regard to public safety recruitment and retention, the funding is provided in this budget for the implementation of a public safety pay schedule based on a step system. It also includes funding to provide pay incentives for special duties, certifications, and degrees. It includes funding, which is already included in the current fiscal year, for the VRS multiplier to be increased from 1.7 to 1.85. And you will consider a resolution associated with that later tonight. And a market study to be conducted every 5 years to ensure competitive status. Okay, with regard to the state revenue, which is $38 million or 39% of the county budget, most of that goes toward schools and social services. That totals over $33 million. And then you can see the breakdown for how much the other constitutional officers and the registrar receives from the state for their budgets. This slide shows the total proposed revenues for FY 21-22. It compares the adopted 2021 budget to the proposed 21-22. You can see increases to general property taxes. That's, as discussed, the real estate and personal property and other associated taxes. The other local taxes, that's sales tax increases, BPO, meals tax increase, but of course the $4 million for the cigarette tax is included here. Licensing permits and fees, the big part of that is the landfill revenue. Then other local revenue is a bit of a decrease there. State revenue increased a little bit over prior year, a little bit increase in the federal revenue, and the non-revenue receipts, that's the transfers from the general fund and revenue stabilization. You can see that that's significantly lowered than the previous fiscal year. This slide just graphically represents where our revenues come from. As you can see, local sources account for the majority of the county's revenue, and then state funds, and then 5% from federal funds, and then 1% from other. Next slide shows expenditures, FY 21-22 compared to what was adopted in 2021. And you can see where the increases are. Increases in schools, public safety, debt service fund, Department of Social Services, and general government. General government shows an increase. That's where we show the revenue stabilization fund, that $1 million that goes there. And under the capital improvement fund, the increase there is associated with the 3-cent real estate tax increase. This is the graphic that shows where the expenditures, where the funding goes. And you can see the majority of that goes to schools, public safety, debt services, social services, and constitutional officers. In closing, Madam Chair, I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors and the Citizen Budget Committee. I'd like to thank the county departments, the constitutional officers, school division, and the agencies. And I also want to thank the finance department and administrative staff, and particularly Levita Cobb and Donna Hahn for their excellent work in preparing this budget. And also like to thank Chris Dines for hanging in there with us at all of our meetings. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, sir. So since we are not able to act on this evening, we won't need a motion for discussion, so I will entertain questions and discussion at the same time. And I will allow Mr. Bush to go first because this is your last budget.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate that. So discussion, okay. So first off, I'd just like to state that I'm proud of how we conducted this budget process. There were things we didn't agree on, but I think we had very fruitful discussions and we put together a realistic budget. Travis, thank you to everybody who worked on this. Amazing job given the circumstances you guys had to operate under and the timeline. With that, I have a couple of things, but I'm gonna start off with the big one first. So I brought this up at our last meeting and we decided that, you know, we're gonna advertise high, we could always go lower. So looking at having more time and looking at what CARES Act funding, how that's gonna play into things. And looking at, it was in one of your slides, Travis, economic uncertainty. One, we're building this budget on $4 million of a cigarette tax that has never been implemented in King George County. We're hoping that we get $4 million. We could get more, but we don't know. We've also seen a reduction in landfill revenues. We don't know if those are gonna go up or those are gonna go down. So while the picture is good of revenues coming in, I still wanna be cautious. With that, looking at the CARES Act funding and things that are going to be available.
Excuse me, Mr. Bush. Can I stop you for just a moment?
Yes,
before you go on too far, if you're not asking questions, right?
No.
Okay, so Does anyone else have questions? Because I do need to open the floor for public comment. Then we can have a more robust discussion.
So,
And my apologies.
no problem. So if we're going to do discussion later, yes, I have no actual questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bender?
Thank you.
Questions for staff? Yeah,
Yes, I
let's
do
go ahead
have
and, yeah.
one question from Travis. Being that said, since it's 4 million that we have not seen, and as we always say about sin tax, you know, sometimes it's meant to reduce people purchasing. Do we have something built in case we do not realize that revenue?
Well, look where this, where the revenue is proposed to go. Only $1.25 million is going to recurring costs. So the other $1 million, $250,000, $250, and $1.25, let's say you get $3 million instead of $4 million. Well, the board can decide later how you want to break that transfer down. For example, you may want to transfer less to the revenue stabilization fund or less to the capital fund, or you may want to do a percentage based on this breakdown. You may want to do a percentage, not touching that 1.25 for the new positions in the public safety recruitment and retention.
All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Mr. Stonehill, questions?
Just one question on the slide that had the sliced up dollar bill. Other outside of federal, what is an example of that one?
On the revenue side or the expenditure?
Go on back one. Yeah, the revenue side.
The revenue side. That would be leases that we have on like cell towers. It's when we lease property and we receive revenues there, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Mr. Granger?
No questions, but thank you for the presentation.
All right, very good. I don't have any questions either, so I will now open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. And as previously stated, we will not be taking action tonight because we are prohibited by law from doing so. So I have a sign-up sheet, and I wish to recognize Ms. Carrie Gonzalez, the Dahlgren District School Board member and chairwoman of the King George County School Board. Thank you very much for your patience and coming out tonight, and you are our first speaker for public comment, ma'am.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Carrie Gonzalez. I'm here as a parent and a citizen this evening. My address is 8116 Oak Crest Drive. I'm here to make a public comment in support of funding the King George County School Division, preferably in the full amount as proposed by the superintendent and King George County School Board, but at a minimum in an amount no less than that advertised prior to this evening. I do like the dollar bill analogy with respect to the portion of the county budget that goes to the schools, as it's easy and understandable. I know that at just under 54% of the budget, the schools are in fact a very large chunk of taxpayer dollars and the county operating budget. This does make sense though, considering the schools are in fact the largest employer in the county, excluding the base, since base employees are federal employees and not paid by the county. And the schools are also charged with providing what is arguably one of our most valuable services, educating our future citizens. This has of course been a very challenging year for all, with the impact of the pandemic felt in extremely different ways across the county's diverse population. As was stated at a recent budget meeting, while some county residents have had cushy telework experiences for the last year, others have in fact lost jobs. Clearly the impacts of the pandemic are far-ranging. That said, I wanted to offer a different perspective on why funding our public schools is important. General financial advice is to invest appropriately in the future. Daily operating expenses must of course be funded, but to the extent possible, it is advisable to invest in our future. Investing in our schools means investing in our children, and our children are our future. Investing in our schools and our children actually saves money in the future. Investment in our children means we educate and produce good citizens who grow up to serve our communities. With higher graduation rates come less required future investments in social services, less investment in jails and juvenile detention, because when we invest in and properly educate our children, they stay in school and they become contributing members of society. In truth, our schools are in great shape. We have an excellent graduation rates and low dropout rates. We have students representing King George at the Naval Academy. Our schools have produced NFL players. We have amazing students who have been taught by amazing teachers. The Board of Supervisors has done a very commendable job in recent years funding the schools and making our teachers' salaries competitive. Teacher salaries in Virginia, however, rank about 33rd in the country. I know this year's budget does include a raise for teachers, but teacher salaries are just one example. I know that these budget decisions weigh heavily on each of you, and I know the school budget arrangement in Virginia, whereby local investment is required to make school budgets whole, creates unique challenges for localities, especially for small rural ones such as ours. The budget presented to you by the superintendent each year is a needs-based budget, which is required of the superintendent by law. It is not superfluous. So I challenge you to continue funding our schools at the levels requested by the school board and superintendent, to continue investing in the county's future, and to see if we can't make our schools even better than they already are. I think better should always be the objective, not just maintaining the status quo, but better, to make progress. To be human is to seek continual progress. As the late John McCain once said, America's greatest strength has always been its hopeful vision of human progress. Our children are our future, and they, therefore, are where the human journey towards progress begins. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Anyone else here in the audience who wishes to provide public comment? Mr. Dines, it's my understanding we have someone online, Ms. Elizabeth Borst. Is she still online for public comment, sir? Ms. Borst, can you hear us, ma'am?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your patience and waiting for your turn to speak tonight. You'll have 3 minutes, ma'am, if you could please again state your name and your address.
Absolutely. I'm Elizabeth Borst. I'm speaking on behalf of Virginia Community Food Connections, and I'm a resident of Spotsylvania County, 12003 Powder Mill Court. Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak briefly with you about our local food access programs, and I'd like to thank you for your proposed outside agency budget support. Virginia Community Food Connections, or VCFC for short, serves low-income residents who receive SNAP or food stamp benefits. SNAP, as you know, is the nation's largest nutrition assistance program. Currently in King George County, 2,000 households and 950 individuals receive SNAP benefits. This is a 16% increase in cases since February 2020 and 108% increase in issuance. This shows the impact of COVID on hunger in our community. We have a strategy of connecting vulnerable consumers with agricultural producers, and this is a really proven way to combat food insecurity as part of a much larger community-based approach. VCFC's SNAP and Virginia Fresh Match incentive program do this by encouraging folks to spend their SNAP benefits at local farmers markets. We increase the purchasing power of those SNAP benefits with a $40 match for fresh fruits and vegetables. So every time a SNAP consumer visits the farmers market, they can get an additional $40 in fresh fruits and vegetables grown by local farmers for free. We operate this food access program at King George Farmers Market and at 6 other farmers markets in the region. In 2020, the SNAP and Virginia Fresh Match spending at King George Farmers Market was over $5,000, which was an increase of 80% over the prior season. Region-wide, our program represents over $200,000 in essential income for local farmers. These programs work in partnership with lots of community organizations, especially with emergency food distribution. We really want to enable those SNAP consumers to choose their own food, their culturally appropriate food, the food that they would like to feed their families. They can purchase that food with dignity from local family farms and in a community marketplace, and that's very important, somewhere close to home. With $400,000 in SNAP benefits dispersed each month in King George, we help some of those dollars be spent with local farmers instead of at big box stores. Our organization brings 100% of the matching funds, the program staffing, and outreach to King George Farmers Market. This partnership enables the farmers market to focus on serving the entire community while we focus on attracting and serving those limited income shoppers. We truly value our partnerships with King George Social Services, with King George Farmers Market, with Virginia Cooperative Extension, and with the Board of Supervisors. Thank you so much for your support for this highly effective food access program. We encourage you to come out and visit us at the market and see it in action for yourself. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you, ma'am, very much for your comments. Mr. Dines, do you have anyone else online who wishes to offer public comment on the budget? Very good, then. I will close the floor for public comment. Can I just ask my colleagues, did anyone receive written statements from constituents requesting to have them entered into the record for public comment? No. No, I didn't either. Okay. Are you good, Mr. Bush? Yes, okay. All right, so we will move on and continue discussion. Mr. Bush, go ahead.
So discussion.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So getting back, I won't repeat everything else I said. So looking at the CARES Act funding and what's going to be available. And I'd like to thank Dr. Benson for his presentation and the very thorough binder that they provided with their budget builder. And looking at that, with the CARES Act funding available, I have come to the conclusion, and granted, I understand it's the absolute authority of the school board to allocate the funds that they're given. But I was concerned that the funding level that we would be providing to the schools would be able to cover their additional position requirements or request and the 5% pay raise for the teachers. I believe with the CARES Act funding, they more than can accomplish that by what I'm about to suggest. We're looking at a 3% tax increase, as Travis just presented. I would like to go back to my original recommendation when we were looking at funding to advertise, and I would like to decrease the local contribution amount by $229,000, allotting for $18 million even in local funding. This is still $400,000 more than what was funded last year. In addition, they're getting $2 million more from the state and the CARES Act funding that will be available. I would then request that the board would direct the county administrator to find $41,000 in the county budget, which would come to a total of $270,000, which equates to 1 cent. And we could then reduce the tax rate that we're advertising increased from 3 cents to 2. I believe we can accomplish that. So for your consideration, that is my suggestion. Again, the cigarette tax is not guaranteed. I believe there's a possibility we will see more, but again, it's economic uncertainty. I'd also like to look at the service authority debt service payment for $250,000. Now, I'm not opposed to working with the service authority and giving or allocating $250,000. However, as a debt service, I have a concern, and I'm not gonna beat this to death, but here's exactly why. In the pie chart that was presented tonight by the general manager of the service authority, it actually reflected the debt fees as revenues. So if that's the case, shouldn't the bills for the service authority customers go down theoretically if we were paying towards the debt service? My proposal is to still allocate $250,000 to the service authority, but rather than a subsidy, which I believe it would be to debt mitigation, I would like for it to go towards capital improvements. A while back, Mr. Weekly gave this board a presentation on capital improvements that the service authority was looking at and that they needed. Well, if we allocated this towards capital improvements, they would not have to tap into the line of credit. And I bring up the line of credit and why I think it's problematic with the debt service is because I had inquired with Mr. Weekly and he replied back to me today as to the oversight of the debt for the service authority. Specific to the line of credit, I asked him, can the board of directors, who the majority is non-elected officials, 3 members are non-elected, can they acquire debt utilizing the line of credit without the authority of the Board of Supervisors? And today, bond counsel confirmed that the Service Authority Board of Directors has that authority. So the Board of Supervisors would then have no oversight. So we would basically be subsidizing the debt, but have no say into how that debt is accumulated. So I still agree with the 250, just I would change it from debt mitigation to capital improvements. So Service Authority, schools, and the Smoot Library, we are giving them $661,546,000. I'm not proposing to cut anything from them. However, the Rivercombe building is open to the public. The Citizen Center is open to the public. I believe the conference rooms at the Smoot Library need to be open to the public. With that, Madam Chair, that concludes my discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Bender?
Well, I'll bring up first with the Smoot Library. I did reach out to, Mr. Bush had asked me, and since I'm on the board, I reached out to Robin, who's the library director, and she said they were working on it. So I will just ask Travis, could you check up with that just to see why? Because I do know my daughter's a Girl Scout. They've had to have virtual meetings this whole time, and I'm sure the Boy Scouts, they've used those rooms. It might be really important to the community to have those rooms open again. And if we could help her facilitate opening those rooms. Now, concerning the Service Authority, I understand Mr. Bush's comments, but the one thing I point out is until recently, every member of the Service Authority Board of Directors was a Board of Supervisor member, and they incurred the debt by not raising the taxes or not raising the fees, not whatever they did in the past. I'm not blaming it, but so we sort of share that debt because part of it was created. So to me, just switching that 250 from debt mitigation to capital funds just seems like you're just shifting chairs or just renaming it. It's semantics. So I still go with paying off the debt mitigation for the 250, and we can reevaluate it every year to see and change. But I just think it's playing with semantics. One other comment I have to make is when I was knocking on doors recently, there's two things that a lot of people asked me about. One was the schools being open and their experiences, and then another was the tax rate and how it was coming. And when I explained to them why it was possibly 3 to 4 cents, they understood when you explained everything to them. They just never had it explained to them before, and they appreciated it. But the biggest thing they asked, and they wanted to make sure, and I haven't heard 100%, I've heard kind of waffling on the school board. I've heard we want them to be open, but I haven't heard of an actual plan. There's lots of plans throughout this country. They look beautiful, they're PDFs, they have pictures. But you make a plan and you work to the plan, and you can always adapt the plan if situations change in August. But the citizens want to see a plan, and they want to know that their kids are going back to school full time to receive all these funds. And I've heard from lots of people, especially in one neighborhood, and almost every door that opened that had children, and there was a lot, said, my kids need to be in school because it's important to their welfare. And you spoke of the kids, it's important for our society. Well, some of those kids are being left behind because virtual is just not working for them. And it's that whole community with the wonderful teachers that help make them better human beings and better career folks and everything in life. So it's really important to the citizens, especially the Shiloh district, that those kids go back to school full time, and those that need the virtual experience have the opportunity. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Stonehill.
Just going in order like everyone else says, the Service Authority, I think we just need to keep that 250 in debt reduction. The debt is just a growing monster, and we need to work that down one way or the other. And I like the debt mitigation for both of those funds right there, and I'd like to see them stay the way they are. The schools, it seems like we really can't get a straight answer of, are they going to open in August? So, they've asked for, an awful lot of money, and we've funded, a good amount of money and an increase from last year. But people keep saying, is school going to open? We don't know. Nobody gives us an answer. We also don't know how much more of this new funding that's going to come in as well. So how much, how much are they going to augment their budget with that? We don't know. We don't really have an answer for that as well. you know, the budget, I think they did a great job on everything. I would actually be in agreement with Mr. Bush if we did decrease it down to, you know, in even 18 million. To go to the schools for that. I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I guess I'll start with service authority. So I don't know if everyone would be willing to entertain, but maybe like a debt mitigation / capital improvements and let it be decided by that group where it would be used. I could understand if you're looking at existing debt and it's at a higher rate, it might be beneficial to say, let's pay down that higher rate debt and then use the line of credit because it's at a lower rate. And so you end up saving money in the long run because you're doing new borrowing, but you're getting rid of old borrowing that is at a higher rate. And so, you know, I'd be willing to entertain giving an option and looking at the finances, and I assume Davenport would probably be able to help with making those determinations on which way using that funding would be most beneficial to reducing the overall cost to citizens who are members of the service or customers of the service authority. So I'll just throw that out there as an option and to let you guys entertain. I as well would be willing to reduce some of the spending for the schools. In particular, you know, I think Ms. Kupka's line was a little bit higher than my line originally, because I was looking at a couple of the positions that are required by the standards of quality. And so, but I think I could probably be convinced to go down to the even 18 million. But then I'd also ask if my colleagues would be willing to entertain possibly providing a full-time position to human resources as opposed to a part-time position. I think Ms. Sumiel presented that the increasing size of the staff has required more needs. And so, you know, we were doing what we could. The difference in the cost would be from 30,000, which we're in our current plan have a part-time position that is being added for 30,000. It would go to 53,000. So it's a $23,000 increase. And so I think it would be of value for our own staff in order to provide them with good services as well for their needs, for development, for handling any kind of conflicts, for all the things that human resources does. And so I would ask that you would entertain that. And so I would love as well to go down to 2 cents, but as you brought up though, Mr. Bush, that there's concerns about, you know, there's risk, because I think you bring up a good point. I think Mr. Stonehill and the cigarette committee have been conservative in their numbers. And I think there's a belief that it will probably be a larger sum of money coming in. And we're going on the low end. But as you said, we've never done this before. So there is risk. There's always going to be some risk involved. And so I think it would be maybe more valuable to not drop that penny and have that money there. And then if there is extra funds, then that can be maybe put towards further debt mitigation. And it just puts us in a better posture to not put ourselves in a bad situation if it doesn't come in as high. We advertised originally when we went with the courthouse, we said, hey, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's a $20 million bond. It's going to be a 3 cent tax hike. We knew that going in. And so that's what we have that we're looking at. It's a 3 cent tax hike. And you know, that's no tax hike for any of the other requests that are coming in. So it would be providing for all of those other requests under the existing funding line, and then saying, hey, we knew that we were coming in with this courthouse and that was going to be this kind of an impact. I think we should leave it at the 73. So I know that's not part of this discussion. I apologize. I've gotten a little ahead of ourselves. I know we have another public hearing, but that's my 2 cents. And so if you guys would be willing to entertain that and discuss it, I would appreciate it.
So I'm not going to elaborate on the service authority. I would like to keep it towards the debt, although you did give me something very interesting to consider because I hadn't considered that, the interest rate difference, to make it optional, see what the best outcome would be at the time. And as far as the schools go, I've been doing some digging about the new round of money. And it's my understanding, the American Rescue Plan that was enacted on March 11th, 2021, and that funding would roll out within 60 days of that March 11th. I know that Mr. Kusenberry and I received correspondence from Treasury on last Thursday evening, so a lot of this has really evolved in the last several days. From Treasury indicating that we needed to be ready for receipt of funds. It's my understanding our locality, on the locality side, the estimate of our allocation is $5.2 million, and that monies also will be distributed directly to the schools. With that in mind, I took a look at the U.S. Department of Education fact sheet about the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And there may be some opportunities here for the school board to recoup some more costs that have been itemized in the upcoming budget, including continuing to respond to COVID-19, training and professional development on sanitizing and minimizing the spread of infectious diseases, purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean the local education agency facilities, repairing and improving school facilities to reduce risk of virus transmission, improving indoor air quality, addressing needs of children from low-income families. And let me state, this is a priority for me personally, given my past work in the schools and with a variety of nonprofits that support youth. Addressing the needs of children from low-income families, children with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, students experiencing homelessness, and foster care youth. Developing, implementing procedures and systems to improve the preparedness and response efforts of local education agencies, planning for or implementing activities during long-term closures, including providing meals to eligible students and providing technology for online learning, purchasing educational technology, including hardware, software, connectivity, assistive technology, and adaptive equipment for students that aids in regular and substantive educational interaction between students and their classroom instructors, providing mental health services and supports, including the implementation of evidence-based full-service community schools and the hiring of counselors, planning and implementing activities related to summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, addressing learning loss and other activities that are necessary to maintain operation of and continuity of services, including continuing to employ existing or hiring new local education agency and school staff. So I feel like there may be an opportunity here for, and I do realize that we were, during the course of our budget discussions, presented CARES 2 proposed expenses, and that was to the tune of $1,371,409.15. And granted, they can spend that money over time, but it seems like there is a great deal more money coming to the schools, maybe a couple million, that perhaps it is worth considering a reduction to $18 million at this point, which would still, by my math, would still put us over $400,000 over the current school year budget. So that's where I'm at on that. As far as human resources, I would have to think about that one a little bit more and go back and take a look at the presentations. Did anyone else want to chime in on with regard to the human resources suggestion by Mr. Granger?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
Excuse me. Thank you. So I can understand what Mr. Granger's saying, but I think if we have the opportunity to decrease the tax rate, I would like to do that. We heard in the Service Authority meeting, Mr. Weekly was speaking about the program for people that have not been able to pay their bills. So, you know, there's a lot of people that are experiencing financial hardships, even people that rent. So let's say they're not a homeowner, they're renting something. If there's a property tax increase, that increase is gonna trickle down to that end user, the renter. So like some people, Ms. Gonzalez said it in her comment, some people are doing very well. You know, teleworking, still getting that paycheck. A lot of people are unemployed. It's just the way our county's built. We're either very successful or we have people that are hurting right now, especially with job losses in the service industries and things like that. So I think if I mean, I know we have to raise the tax rate, and I hate it because I made it 3 years without us having to raise the tax rate, and here we are doing it. I think if there's a way to lower it and give some alleviation to that financial burden that eventually is going to be passed down. And some people are at that threshold to where they simply won't be able to afford, you know, an increase. That one penny might make a difference. Might be small, but a difference nonetheless. So I think as the financial stewards, you know, we're here to provide services, but you know, if there's an opportunity to let people keep more of what they earn, I'm all in favor of that. So I would like to maybe explore the additional position next budget for the future board. I think there's merit to it. There's merit to a lot of positions that were requested. So that's where I stand with the human resources position, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Bender?
I just had a thought. You know, in years past, we have reevaluated at the mid-year point. Could it be possible if we do see increased revenue, we could revisit that and maybe some other positions at the mid-year point?
So my understanding of state code is that we could amend the budget as long as the amendment was not more than 1% of the total budget. So that would be as long as it's less than $974,000 and change, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Well, you can amend the budget, but if there is more than 1%, you have to have a public hearing.
Without a public hearing, I'm sorry, I didn't put that part in. Thank you, Mr. Britton. Did you need anything else?
No,
any other?
I was just bringing that up, that it could be reevaluated again. I know we've done it in the past.
Yep. Anyone else? No? All right. Do you need any further direction from us at this time, Mr. Kusenberry?
Yes. The $250,000 for debt mitigation or capital projects, the budget doesn't care what you call that right now as far as the budget is concerned. So we don't need to deal with that in the budget. But this is a number we need to deal with. How much do you want us to show for the local contribution to schools?
So I'll go down the line and poll the members. I think some of us made it pretty clear, and we just need clarity from everyone.
I would be in favor of an $18 million even local contribution.
Ms. Bender?
18 million.
Mr. Stonehill?
18.
Mr. Granger?
18.
$18 million even it is then, sir.
My next question is the direction then to find the additional approximately 41,000 to enable the tax rate to be reduced from a 3-cent increase to a 2-cent increase?
Mr. Bush?
Madam Chair, I would like to get consensus of the board to authorize the county administrator to locate $41,000 within the county's entire budget to make that accommodation and lower the tax rate from 3 to 2 cents.
Ms. Bender?
I only have one question on that. Can we have both options? And the only reason I'm asking that is because in the past, it's been brought up that, by raising the tax 3 cents, we're anticipating for the future as a fallback. So I'd just like to see both numbers. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Stonehill?
I say leave it at 3 the way it is. Gives us some more padding to in any type of shortcomings that we have. And I certainly don't want to, but it always seems like we're always behind the curve. So I would leave it at 3.
Mr. Granger?
I would be inclined to say leave it at 3 as well. Again, based off Mr. Bush, like Mr. Bush brought up, the concerns about just risk and not knowing where maybe the funding revenues will be coming in. I think it puts us in a better posture to mitigate some of that risk. So I would be in favor of sticking with the 73.
I too am in favor of leaving it at 3% at this time, given the uncertainty.
3 cents.
I'm sorry, 3 cents, not 3%, 3 cents.
Understood.
Thank you. And I just want to make it clear because someone didn't hear me, but public comment is closed. The public hearing is closed. Thank you. All right, so Mr. Kusenberry, you have everything you need. We can move on to the next public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a public hearing that has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding the calendar year 2021 tax rate. I will first ask for the staff report. I will then open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight, depending on information received during public comment. All right, staff report, Mr. Kusenberry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a lot shorter report. I only have one slide. This slide shows the tax rates, the current tax rate for calendar year 2020 and the proposed tax rate for calendar year 2021. And this shows a 3 cent tax increase in real property. Of course, that also applies to the mobile homes. And this is only the mobile homes that are on a permanent foundation. The mobile homes that are not tied down on a permanent foundation are taxed as personal property. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
All right, questions only? Anyone? Ms. Bender?
Yeah, I just had, because I didn't know that. So what kind of foundation?
It would have to be a brick, a cinder block foundation where it's concrete and it's just like a house foundation.
Okay, thank you. I learned something today.
Mr. Stonehill? Mr. Granger, no questions? I don't have any questions, sir. So I will go ahead and open the floor for public comment. Is there anyone here in the boardroom who wishes to provide public comment? Seeing none, I will ask Mr. Dines. You indicated no one had signed in. I just wanted to double check, sir. Anyone for online public comment regarding the calendar year 2021 tax rate? No. All right. Did anyone have any written correspondence to be entered? All right, I will close the public hearing and does anyone have any discussion they'd like to offer on this? Mr. Bush? Ms. Bender? No? Okay. All right, and that's, yep. All right then, I think we're ready to go ahead and move on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next item, Department of Community Development Fee Schedule Resolution. Ms. Hall, Director of Community Development, welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present Community Development's proposed fee schedule, implementation July 1, 2021. As you're aware, we have heard this before. March 31st, 2021, Community Development presented the proposed amended fee schedule to the Board of Supervisors and Budget Advisory Committee. During this session, staff provided comparisons to neighboring jurisdictions and found that King George is lower in comparison to most other counties, warranting an overall update of the department's fees. April 7th, the Board of Supervisors had a consensus to consider adoption of the fee schedule at tonight's board meeting. We compared our fee schedules with Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, City of Fredericksburg, Caroline County, and Westmoreland County. Our major changes in proposed new fees include an application deposit, advertisement cancellation fee, subdivision appeal fee, third-party fiscal impact study fee, GIS fees, plan review fees, amendment review fee, and a solar farm fee. We also made updates to our commercial building permit fee schedule, residential building permit fee schedule, and planning and zoning fee schedule, which all was included in your packets tonight. Some highlights of the fee increase include single-family dwelling permit has increased from 25 cents to 35 cents with a minimum fee of $200, which was previously $100. This includes the electrical, plumbing, and mechanical permit. A grading permit is now $300 and zoning is $125. Remodel interior has increased from 15 cents to 25 cents with a $150 minimum. Again, highlighted in red is the commercial permits do not include the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing permits. The building permit is set at 25 cents per square foot with a $300 minimum, previously 15 cents a square foot with a $125 minimum. Remodel or shell only permits at 15 cents per square foot with a $200 minimum, previously 10 cents a square foot with a $75 minimum. Fee increases highlighted in red include the planning and zoning plan review fees, as well as our subdivision plan reviews, wetlands board permits, and home occupation has also increased. Tonight, the Department of Community Development requests the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution amending Community Development's fee schedule to be included with the 2021 budget effective July 1, 2021.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Any questions from members? All right, I will go ahead and read the resolution aloud so that someone can move to adopt it. At a regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of King George County, Virginia, held at the King George County Boardroom on April 20, 2021, the following resolution was properly moved, seconded, voted upon, and made by the board to set the fee schedule for the King George County Department of Community Development. Whereas it is the duty of the Board of Supervisors Board to establish the fee schedule for the Department of Community Development Department. And whereas the department manages matters relating to the King George County Building Code, subdivision ordinance, zoning ordinance, and other permitting and oversight requiring fees and costs. And whereas the department has recommended that the fee schedule attached as Appendix 1 be adopted, and whereas the fee schedule for the department has not been, so the text says be update, I believe it should read has not been updated since.
Yeah. It should read that because I wrote it, it's my fault.
Okay, so when we move, if we can have it as amended, has not been updated since July 1, 2018. And whereas the board finds that the fee schedule is fair and reasonably necessary to carry out the work of the department and to serve the citizens of the county, now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the fee schedule for the King George County Department of Community Development, including the building code, subdivision ordinance, and zoning ordinance as set forth in Appendix 1 attached to this resolution, is hereby adopted, and further, that such fee schedule shall take effect on July 1, 2021. Board of Supervisors of King George County, Virginia.
I move to adopt the resolution amending community development's fee schedule as presented and read by Ms. Kupka with the amendment.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Britton, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to let you know, the reason that you're not holding a public hearing, there are some few fees in the ordinance. You're not changing any of those. This is the fee schedule that the ordinance says that you adopt by resolution.
Yes.
So that's why you're not changing the ordinance. You're just doing what the ordinance says you're supposed to do.
Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think we had a thorough enough discussion at our work session, so I won't go into detail and rehash that. However, I would still like, for the record, my opposition to the increases in the residential side. Aside from that, I would like to commend Ms. Hall and her team for this whole thing. There's a lot, but it's just the residential side is a stickler for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Anyone else? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Because we do have to record it on the resolution, please let the record show Mr. Bush voted nay. All other members voted aye. All right, thank you, Ms. Hall. And VRS increase resolution. Ms. Sumiel.
Wow. Didn't get it off. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm here tonight to request a change in the VRS retirement multiplier as part of the hazardous duty enhanced benefit already in place for those under fire rescue, medical technicians, firefighters, and law enforcement officers. But first, let me give you a little bit of background. In 2007, the King George County Board of Supervisors approved as part of its fiscal year 08 operating budget the enhanced retirement benefits for all of its eligible emergency medical technicians, firefighters, and law enforcement officers. Employees in positions covered with hazardous duty coverage may be eligible for an increased multiplier and/or the hazardous duty supplement. The hazardous duty supplement is a dollar amount added to the monthly retirement benefit. At the time of the election, the county had the option to elect a service retirement multiplier of 1.85%. If the employee did not make this election, the multiplier would be 1.7%. Currently, the multiplier for King George is at 1.7. Retention, especially in public safety, continues to be a concern. In January 2020, a public safety retention committee was established to develop strategies to reduce turnover and increase retention. One of the recommendations was a pay increase for 3%, 4%, or 5% based on the years of service. This was approved and implemented effective May the 1st of 2020. No further actions were recommended by the committee due to COVID-19. Increasing the retirement multiplier was another strategy that the committee came up with. The election will benefit public safety employees, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, and law enforcement officers. And it will also bring us in line with nearby jurisdictions, the city of Fredericksburg, Stafford, and Spotsylvania counties. They already offer this 1.85% multiplier. Now, just to give you an idea of how significant the change in the multiplier would be, I'll give you an example. We have an employee who's covered under hazardous duty. They retire at the age of 55 with 30 years of service. The average final compensation, which is your 3 highest years of compensation, is at $60,000. So you would multiply $60,000 times 1.7% times 30 years. That gives you $30,600. You divide that by 12 months, and they would get $2,550 for their retirement. In comparison, take that same number, $60,000, multiplied by 1.85% times 30 years, you get $33,300. $33,300 divided by 12 is $2,775. That's a difference of $225 a month. That may not seem significant, but if you retire at 55 and say you live to be 75, 20 years times 225 is significant. So how would this be funded? The funds are currently available, as Travis mentioned earlier. They're already available in our current budget and have been included in the fiscal year 21-22 budget as well. If the board elects to pick up the 1.85% multiplier, it will also change the employer contribution. The new rate would be 9.52%, which reflects an increase of 0.72%. The rate will be effective through June 30th, 2022, and is applied to the county's VRS contributions for all employees. So not only would you benefit public safety by increasing the multiplier, but it will also increase the contribution of the county for all employees. Contribution rates are based on a rate-setting actuarial valuation, which is done every 2 years. So I recommend that the King George County Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution amending the election of the VRS multiplier to 1.85% for employees covered under the Enhanced Hazardous Duty Benefit. Please note that should you elect the higher multiplier, it is an irrevocable election and will apply to all current and future hazardous duty positions. A board-approved resolution is required if you elect to move forward with a higher retirement multiplier of 1.85%. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Sumil. Questions?
I don't have any questions, but I'd just like to say thank you for the concrete example to understand the impact. It really helps to put it in context, so thank you.
Mr. Stonehill?
No questions, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Bender?
I just want to say thank you for your work, and I did appreciate the example. It made it a little clearer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bush?
Same thing, the example really helps. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So I just have one question. In reading the resolution, what is the effective date? Effective the first day of insert month and year?
So we have the choice, and you can verify this, Travis, since we have the money in the budget now, we can move forward with that, or we could wait till July 1st.
So potentially it could be May 1st. So let me poll my colleagues as to their wishes.
May 1st.
Yeah. May 1st, very good. Thank you. All right then. I'll go ahead and read the resolution. Where enhanced hazardous duty benefits, whereas subject to the approval of the Virginia Retirement System, VRS Board of Trustees, Code of Virginia, Section 51.1-138, permits a political subdivision of the Commonwealth of Virginia currently participating in VRS to make an irrevocable election to provide enhanced hazardous duty retirement benefits for its eligible employees as outlined in Section 51.1-138, and now therefore be it resolved that the King George County Board of Supervisors, the employer, does hereby elect to have such employees of employer who are employed in positions as full-time law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency medical technicians. We don't have anyone who technically is called a jail officer, right? All of our sheriff's deputies are law enforcement officers, right? So I don't have to make that distinction. Okay. And whose tenure is not restricted as to temporary or provisional appointment become eligible effective the first day of May 2021 for VRS benefits equivalent to those provided for state police officers of the Department of State Police as set out in Section 51.1-138, including the retirement multiplier of 1.85% in lieu of the benefits that would otherwise be provided to such employees, an employer agrees to pay the employer cost for providing such benefits, and now, therefore, the officers of employer are hereby authorized and directed in the name of employer to carry out the provisions of this resolution and to pay to the Treasurer of Virginia from time to time such sums as are due to be paid by employer for this purpose. Yes.
Did you actually leave out jail officers?
Yes, I did.
So my understanding, this would go into effect for all current and then any future employees. So if we ever down the road had jail officers, is the fact that it wouldn't be in a resolution be an issue? I don't know if that will ever happen, that we would go down that road, but I'm just.
I don't think that it would be. I mean, if they're newly created positions, we don't currently have them now.
Okay.
I don't know, I can say it in the reverse. I don't think there's any harm in covering a position that we don't have now, and that would cover what Mr. Granger is saying. You know, we're part of a regional jail, but depending on, it could change depending on what the sheriff wants in the locality.
Okay, so I wish to amend my reading of the resolution to read. Well, I'll do it. I'll read. I'm just going to read that one sentence. I'm not going to read the whole.
You don't even need to read it. I could just make it. I understand. I see, Sheriff. I'm tracking, but I would prefer just to have it in just.
Yep. Let me just read that one sentence. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, we need to with this resolution, I think, because it does say right on top in bold letters, and it says not subject to modification. So I think we definitely need to read that into it. So.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and read that sentence. Does hereby elect to have such employees of employer who are employed in positions as full-time law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, jail officers, for the record. Okay.
I move to adopt the enhanced hazardous duty benefits resolution as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sheriff Giles and Chief Moody, for coming out this evening. Yes, sir. All right. Moving on, County Administrator's Report.
Yes, ma'am. I just have a couple of items. I'm glad to see the sheriff still here. I received a letter of notification from the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Division of Animal Food Industry Services, Office of Veterinary Services. On April the 15th, they conducted an unannounced inspection of the pound, and there were no findings of non-compliance and no violations were cited. So that was good. That's good news. I received some documents today from the Ralph Bunch Arts and Humanities Center. I did forward those documents to the Board of Supervisors. And the last thing I have is I received a letter from the president of Germanna Community College informing us that King George County Representative, Dr. Victor Gelman, G-E-H-M-A-N, he served for 2 terms as on the community college board, and he cannot be reappointed. So the president is asking King George County Board to appoint a successor to Dr. Gelman.
Thank you, Mr. Kusenberry. So if members, if you could see if you have anyone you wish to appoint. Do you have one, Mr. Granger?
I have someone I could at least engage to see if they'd be interested.
Please.
But I was going to ask Mr. Kusenberry if you could maybe provide the, I guess, expectations and meeting requirements and things like that for this committee, so I could provide that.
And then also, how many years has he served on the?
I think he said 8.
He has served 2nd term, So I believe each term is 4 years.
Yeah, so if we could perhaps invite him to a future board meeting where we could present him a plaque or something to,
Absolutely.
you know, express our appreciation. 8 years is a long time for a volunteer to serve on a board like that.
Did come down and speak to me, and he said that he would also be looking for somebody to take his place and working with Dr. Gillickson about, you know, finding somebody to take care of that. And he said he would report back if he did find somebody that was willing. And he said he had somebody in mind, but he was going to approach them and get back to me about it.
Okay, great. All right, anything else, sir?
No, ma'am.
All right, so I think we're ready for a motion.
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors convene in a closed meeting pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2-3711A5, 6, and 8 for discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the businesses or industries' interest in locating or expanding its facilities and the community. Discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interest of the governmental unit would be adversely affected in consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring provision of legal advice by such counsel. I invite the county administrator and the county attorney because they are deemed necessary and/or their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of the topics to be discussed pursuant to VA Code Section 2.23712F.
Mr. Britton.
Yeah, I sent that out and I left off the Director of Economic Development.
And inviting the county administrator, county attorney, and head of economic development.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. We are in closed session. Do we have a motion?
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certified by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meetings requirement by Virginia law and such public business matters were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
All members please so certify.
I so certify.
So certify.
So certify.
So certify.
So certify. We are in open meeting. Do I have another motion?
Was there something besides adjournment? There was? Was there something besides adjournment?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I move to adjourn until May 4th at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.